1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, January 19th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, minus 15 degrees. In Smiths Falls, minus 14. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. New COVID-19 poll indicates many Canadians are struggling with their mental health during this pandemic, and most say they do intend to get the vaccine when they get the chance. City News' Kevin Meisner joins us from Queen's Park, where the province's top doctor appears hopeful the lockdown is doing its job.
The number of people who say their mental health is bad or very bad has jumped 8 points since April to 21%. 32% of Canadians say their mental health is excellent or very good, and that's down 10% from the spring. But Ontario's Chief Medical Officer of Health is striking a cautiously positive tone. Dr. David Williams says the lockdown measures appear to be working.
Some of the positive indications that we are making some headway at flattening the curve. We would sort of move ourselves down to the 1% growth level, but early days.
On Monday, Ontario had close to 2,600 new COVID-19 cases with nearly 400 patients in intensive care. To ease lockdown measures, Dr. Williams says we'll have to see daily case counts below 1,000 and the number of people in ICU fewer than 150. At Queen's Park, I'm Kevin Meisner.
City News Time, 9:01. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Well, just a light and variable wind today, but we've got cold temperatures, and it'll feel a bit colder than the temperature indicates. A high today, -7, some flurries at times. Tonight, cloudy, a few flurries, -12, and tomorrow, sun and cloud, the high only -9. For today, the high, -7.
And right now in Smiths Falls, minus 14 degrees. In Ottawa, it's minus 15. The Boeing 737 MAX will be green-lighted to resume flights in Europe next week after getting clearance in Canada for tomorrow. Nearly 2 years after the aircraft was grounded worldwide following 2 deadly crashes.
Patrick Guy, the head of the European Union Aviation Safety Agency, says 737 MAX planes will be permitted to fly so long as they meet conditions specified by the agency and that pilots are up to date on their training. Kai, at an online event hosted by Germany's Aviation Press Club, says the crafts will be cleared to fly again from next week. Changes mandated by ESA include a recertification of the plane's flight control system, which was not part of previous 737 models. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
City News Time, 9:02. On the eve of Joe Biden's inauguration, U.S. President Donald Trump expected to issue a flurry of pardons. Trump is leaving office with a job approval rating of just 38%. He will be the first sitting president since Andrew Johnson in 1869 not to attend his successor's inauguration. Washington is in lockdown amid rising anxiety about security of Biden's swearing in, with tens of thousands of U.S. National Guard troops on the streets. Amtrak has now announced that all Northeast regional trains south of Washington, D.C., that includes all stations in Virginia, will be canceled both today and tomorrow amid heightened security concerns following the attack on the U.S. Capitol. The Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario has received application for a pot shop in Embrun. Shiny Bud Cannabis, slated for 649 Notre Dame Street, that's near the roundabout at Bay. The application for the shop has entered a 15-day public notice phase. Opposed residents can voice their concerns. Shiny Bud looks as if it's cornering the market in rural eastern Ontario. Stores opening soon in Arnprior, Brockville, Kempville, Pembroke, Perth, Prescott, Smiths Falls, as well as Stittsville. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Your opinion.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
I wonder, are there reasons to be optimistic? Could the worst of the post-holiday COVID-19 spike be over? I can't say for sure. That's why we have an expert coming on our program this morning. Good morning. This is the Rob Snow Show, Rogers TV and City News. A guy can dream, right? Be hopeful that better times are ahead. Maybe the worst of this might be over. 2,578 cases across Ontario yesterday. Now, it's still a big number, right? Don't get me wrong. But these days, like, everything is relative. And I remember when Premier Ford announced these stay-at-home orders, which happened a week ago today, Ontario reported closer to 3,000 cases. I actually looked it up, and the number was 2,903. And yesterday, 2,578. So in a week, the overall number of cases is down 11% in a week. Hey, look, we haven't had a lot of wins lately. Let's count this as a win. Maybe it has nothing to do with anything, but you know what? It's cold. It's January. It still gets dark too early. I'm trying to stay positive. 2,500 cases is a lot better than 3,000. And for a while there, we were nudging up against 4,000. And the modeling, the forecasting from the experts suggested if we didn't do something and something soon, it's a number that might hit 5,000 and then 10,000. So, 2,500, still a big number. Maybe we should take it. At least for now. We'll see what the number is an hour from now. In an hour from now, the new numbers are out, and I might be depressed all over again. And look, we have a long way to go before we climb out of this stay-at-home order. It's another 22 days until the 10th of February, and yesterday, Dr. David Williams said he wouldn't even recommend any lockdown measures be ended until the daily case count drops to 1,000 cases a day. A long way to go. And I guess when it comes to reopening and what number it has to be in order to reopen things, that's kind of become a moving target as well, hasn't it? That has evolved over many months. Back when the Ford government was touting its reopening plan, and I was wondering if the Calypso water slide park was going to open. You remember those good old days? Dr. Williams back then used to say he wouldn't suggest reopening any region in the province until cases province-wide were 200 a day. Not only did they have to hit 200 a day, they had to be 200 and stay there for 4 weeks, he said. So 200 used to be good. Now, maybe we can reopen things with 1,000 cases a day. I know. But lots of people expected that there would be a post-Christmas and New Year's spike. And this coming Thursday will be 3 weeks since New Year's Eve. So I'm just keeping my fingers crossed. Maybe the worst of it is over. We now return you to your regularly scheduled crisis. We will get into all the COVID-19 data points and debatable points this morning. Dr. Isaac Bogosh going to be back on our program, a member of Ontario's vaccine task force. Has it peaked? Has it plateaued? 1 dose for many or 2 doses for some? That's all coming up in the 11 o'clock hour of our program this morning. Professor Ian Lee after the 9:30 news, and in just a few minutes' time, City Councillor Keith Eglai. He happens to be the chair of the Ottawa Board of Health. Pfizer. The Pfizer delay means municipalities and provinces are left scrambling now. They had plans, and now they have to rework their plans. They have to make do with less. No different here in Ottawa. So we have now learned that the plan is to give second doses of the vaccine as scheduled to residents in long-term care homes, high-risk retirement homes, as well as to their essential caregivers. They'll get those second doses as per the original protocol, 21 to 27 days apart. Gosh, this is turning into a real headache for lower levels of government on the front lines. You see, Mr. Trudeau and his government had one job. Okay? Procure the vaccine. That was the big job. Procure the vaccine. And they didn't miss an opportunity to do photo ops. Didn't miss an opportunity to sound off about how much vaccine had been secured. We could all be, vaccinated 5 times over. But now the fact is, whatever we were supposed to get from Pfizer, which we all know by now is the most delicate of the vaccines because of the storage requirements, whatever we were supposed to get over the next month, it's now been cut in half. Alberta will run out of vaccine today. Alberta, an entire province, 4.5 million people, no vaccine available. None. Zero. It's in the Calgary Herald this morning. In provinces, cities, towns, counties, from one end of the country to the other. Big on demand, very short on supply. I'm sure the Prime Minister is going to try and do his best to once again reassure the country that everything is under control. He's doing his routine at Rideau Cottage this morning, 11:15, doing another one of those daily briefings today. Let's hope he has better news on the vaccine front, because look, there's a lot riding on this. There's nothing more important in the country right now than getting shots into arms. Would you agree? That it's the key to saving lives, it's the key to saving livelihoods. Vaccination is what's going to end lockdowns and curfews and stay-at-home orders. It's what will save business. It's what will keep people from going stark raving mad. Prevent people from growing broke and living in the streets. Politically, which should really be the least of our concerns, if Justin Trudeau was really plotting to call an election this spring, and by all accounts he is, he better hope the results of his vaccination program improve a great deal between now and then. Because, you know what? It's not going well. Okay? To be charitable is not going well. I mean, think about it. Here we are in Ottawa, okay? Second largest city in the largest province in the country, city of 1 million people. Not a single person has received a single dose of the Moderna vaccine. All of these weeks later, it's been almost a month, actually, since Moderna was approved for use in Canada. December 23rd, it was approved in Canada. Here it is, January 19th, almost a month. According to this city memo, City of Ottawa, no idea how many doses it will be getting this week because of the situation with Pfizer. Again, one of the largest cities in the country. And that story, it is a story that repeats itself town after town after town after town, East Coast to the West Coast. Now, that's not the only story in the mix, of course. Politically, there is the latest news involving Derek Sloan, soon to be ex-Conservative Member of Parliament Derek Sloan, hallelujah. Soon to be, not soon enough for some, like me. You might want to express your opinion on that. I thought Aaron O'Toole, I've made no secret of this, I thought he should have rid himself of Sloan, the problem child, a long time ago. I know that's not a popular opinion among some of you. Get your own radio show. But here we go again. Here we go again with this guy. Not even 24 hours after the leader of the Conservative Party tells Canadian voters there's no room for the far right in the Conservative Party of Canada, that the Conservative Party of Canada is a tolerant party and an inclusive party. News hits. Derek Sloan cashed a check from a neo-Nazi. Right. Of course he did. Some guy named Fromm. Last time I heard about this guy, he had shown up at the Adamson barbecue thing a few months ago, raising eyebrows. Anyway, poor Derek Sloan feels hard done by. Poor fella. Vows he's going to fight this expulsion. Poor fella, so hard done by. There is some speculation that it may have been an inside job because it makes it easier for O'Toole to get rid of him. And that's what he's going to do. He's going to kick Derek Sloan out of the Conservative caucus, won't be allowed to run again as a Conservative candidate in the next election. Look. You know my feelings about the man. I think it's about time. I wish he had done it sooner. I'm open to hearing your opinion. You can call me. We'll talk about it. I don't want to be disagreeable. We do it during the talkback hour. We do that every morning. Calls, opinions, most welcome between 10 and 11 o'clock at 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Look, how's this for a standard that every conservative should try and meet? Don't take money from neo-Nazis. How about that? Okay? It's not the toughest standard I have ever heard of. Don't take money from white nationalists. And for those of you who think, oh, O'Toole, he's being too tough on the man, there is an election coming. Soon. Do you really want to spend 30 days of an election campaign trying to defend Derek Sloan? Or do you want to spend 30 days holding Justin Trudeau to account for his handling of the pandemic, especially now, the vaccination program? Look, good, bad, complicated. We talk about it all. Try not to be disagreeable. This is the Rob Snow Show on the City News.
When you've lost your breasts, you've sort of lost part of yourself. And then all at once you're losing your hair. You don't know who you are anymore. You want to feel like yourself again. So I think that the store, a mastectomy store, is essential because you've lost your identity. And then all at once, you're looking for a wig, you need a headscarf, you need a camisole. There's nowhere to go. There's no one to talk to. This should be essential because there are more and more women that are getting breast cancer. I think it's 1 in 6. They're becoming younger. I have a client that's 18 years old. And where do they go? They need a place like this that the women that work there understand. They know what you're going through. It's changed quite a bit. Our hours are different. We're now open from 10 to 5. We're not as busy as we were. A lot of women are afraid to go out. They're afraid that maybe there are more people in the store. So that's why I try and let them know you are alone. There's absolutely nobody in the store except you and I. If there is a woman that she's very afraid, I will lock the door to make sure nobody else comes in. I'll put a sign back in 10-15 minutes just to give her that reassurance. Before we would have 4, 5, 6 people in the store. We didn't have to turn anybody away. Now we do. Some clients do leave and they're upset because they're in the store. They said, you know, we drove 20 minutes and now we're not allowed in the store. And I try to make them understand that there's somebody in here that's going through chemo or radiation. So that's sort of changed a lot, that we're not able to have more people in the store.
If we're talking about products, there's the bras that are adapted for mastectomy. The bathing suits that are adapted to mastectomy. We have special camisoles as well, and post-surgery bras. And then we have, for women going through chemo, the wigs that we have a big selection in the store as well. We have scarves. Some women don't feel comfortable wearing a wig. They prefer to wear a scarf or a hat, so we have a huge selection of that as well. We offer compression garments as well. When you're going through a mastectomy, you might have lymphedema in your arms after a couple of years, and you have flare-ups. So we have the sleeves, the hand as well that can be covered. We show each other's our scar. We talk about the treatments, how we felt, and I guess that's what they're looking for here. That's what makes us special. We have an added value in this store. Besides everything that's in the store, that's a product that can handle any problem that a client might have. Me and Linda, we've been through. We know how it feels in our bodies.
Returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Pleased to welcome back to the Rob Snow Show this morning the City Councillor for Knoxdale-Maryville Ward and Chair of the Ottawa Board of Health, Keith Eglai. Good morning, Councillor.
Morning, Rob.
Yeah, it's very nice to hear from you. Thank you for taking the time.
No problem at all.
How would you describe how things have been going with the vaccine rollout to date, say prior to the news about the Pfizer delay?
So, I guess that's a question of like, how is the city doing versus the other levels of government? I'm going to take it that way.
Yes.
The city, the city, I think, has a very robust rollout plan and process underway. It's a combination of our emergency services, public health, the Ottawa Hospital. And, to date, we had received approximately 24,000 vaccine doses, or 22 rather, 22 and a half.
22,425.
Yeah, and as of yesterday, we had administered 21,983 of those, or 38 of those. So it's going well. I mean, the parameter I have to put around that, of course, and I think this is what you're getting at, is we're only as good as our supply chain from the federal and provincial governments. And Pfizer, of course, announced that they're going to be, in effect, I think, retooling their factory over the next number of weeks, which is going to cause us to receive about half the number of doses that we were anticipating receiving.
So in light of that, what is the plan?
So, I mean, as I say, we're kind of in a box, Rob. We can only, like a carpenter, he can only work with the tools in his box. We can only work with the vaccine that we're supplied with. So we're looking at how we can best, in partnership with the hospital emergency services, how we can best utilize the vaccine that we will be getting. It looks like what we'll be doing is primarily we'll be going back and providing second doses to individuals that have received their first doses, because we don't want to lose the efficacy of the first dose. So that's where we're going to be concentrating our efforts over the next couple of weeks. And then, of course, there's so many variables here. We have 2 vaccines that are approved at this point.
Yes.
If that changes, if AstraZeneca or Johnson & Johnson get approved over the next little while, that will put more supply in the pipeline. Ottawa currently doesn't have any Moderna vaccine. That's being used in different ways in the province. For example, in a lot of the hard-to-reach areas up north where the freezing requirement for the vaccines is not part of the process. But that can change as well. So this is a very fluid situation. And I guess what I would say is that I'm really impressed with how our organization, OPH, and the city at large, through emergency services and hospital, they're ready to go. When the vaccine is there, they can ramp up very quickly to our targeted populations, as we're doing now, and then to the greater population. So it's just a question of getting those doses into the city. But once they're there, again, there's a very robust plan to get them out to the general public.
Yeah. I mean, you use this analogy of a carpenter, and the carpenter going to have all the tools, but it's not so much about the tools. In this case, it's kind of like the carpenter has all the tools, but he doesn't have doesn't have any lumber, right?
Yeah,
so
fair enough.
Yeah. Now this, there's been this tremendous debate in the medical community and the scientific community, and we're probably not the best equipped to have it. I'm a radio broadcaster, and you're a city councillor. You used to be a lawyer, so I didn't go to medical school, counselors. Not sure.
Yeah, no,
not sure
you
did,
my
right?
excuse that way for OPH, making it very clear that I'm not a doctor and have no medical training.
Right. So we're all in good hands. But the debate in the medical community is, should we, we have these doses, should we give them to as many people as possible, or should we reserve some and follow the protocols about you get the first dose at this time and the second dose so many weeks later? That decision by the city to give the second dose 21 to 27 days is actually a direction from the province. Do I understand that correctly?
Correct. Yeah. And if you look across the river in Quebec, they're doing it somewhat differently. They're stretching out the time period they believe will still have effective vaccines, and are giving it to more initial receivers, if you will. Again, that's a decision that is provided to us, or a direction provided to us by the upper levels of government. So, again, I'm not a doctor.
Right.
We have to go with what we have from our professionals and our experts, and
Right, but the municipality is basically following the direction of the provincial government. The province has said,
yes,
this is what we want you to do with this 2-dose vaccine. Give the second dose to as many people as you can, right?
Yes, exactly. To get the second dose to all or as many as people that got the first dose as we possibly can.
Right.
Correct.
Yes.
And again, the province is in some ways at the mercy of the federal government, because the federal government controls the supply, if you will. And so if Pfizer isn't producing, then it's not getting into the larger pool of Canada and then shared out amongst all the provinces.
Yeah. Look, I just want to get your sense of it, where you think we are here. It's been coming up on 3 weeks since New Year's Eve. The number was a bit encouraging yesterday, just locally here. It was less than 100 for the first time in a while. Province-wide, down below 3,000. We are hearing words in the news media like plateaued. We may have plateaued. I know you're following it closely and the numbers closely. What's your gut say?
I'm cautiously optimistic that the restrictions that were put in starting Boxing Day, we're starting to see the positive impacts of those. It's too early to say about the more restrictive actions taken by the province in the last few days, because again, there's usually a 10-day, 2-week lag between when you put something into play and when you can actually see that impact in the numbers. But as I say, I'm cautiously optimistic. What we're seeing is the positive impact of the restrictions put in on Boxing Day.
Okay. I thank you again for your time, Councillor.
No problem at all. Happy to do it anytime, Rob.
The City Councillor for Knoxdale-Maryville Ward. He is also the chair of the Ottawa Board of Health, Keith Eglite. So, look, we're going to have more on this. Vaccine deliveries, shipments have for 4 weeks starting in late January. 1 dose for many, 2 doses for those who already received the first dose. That's a big debate as well. Dr. Isaac Bogosh going to join us, infectious disease physician, member Ontario's Vaccine Task Force. That is coming up right after the 11 o'clock news this morning. And we're in the final few hours of the Trump presidency, with pardons expected today, but it will not be the end of the legal problems for President Trump. Professor Richard Lempert is going to join us, distinguished professor of law and professor emeritus at the University of Michigan. He's going to join us today as well on the Rob Snow Show here on City News.
local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, January 19th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and Smiths Falls, minus 13 degrees. Here's what's making news this hour. Provincial opposition leader Andrea Horwath holding a media briefing in the next half hour, trying to pressure the government to bring in paid sick days. The NDP leader says there are many who can't call in sick because they lose their pay. So even if they had COVID symptoms, they still have to work in order to make enough money to pay their bills. Horwath is calling on the province to bring in sick leave benefits, but Premier Doug Ford says there is already a federal program in place to cover those workers who do not have that benefit. Infection transmission rate in Ontario has dropped to 0.7. That means for every infected person with COVID-19, they infect 0.7 people. One of the initial goals in fighting this pandemic was to get that rate below 1. It could mean a dramatic drop in case numbers province-wide if that rate continues to diminish. The next COVID-related problem could be mutations. Health experts are reporting mutations are rapidly popping up. They say the longer it takes to vaccinate people, the more likely it is a variant that can elude current tests, treatment, and vaccines could emerge. Scientists say the high rate of new infections is why this coronavirus is becoming more genetically diverse. City News Time, 9:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Professor Ian Lee is back from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University, here with me every week on the Rob Snow Show. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah, it's very nice to hear from you. Thank you for taking the time. So widely reported this week that one of the top priorities for Joe Biden, the inauguration tomorrow, one of his top priorities will be to rescind all the permits for Keystone XL, the pipeline from Alberta, northern Alberta to Nebraska. What do you think of that, Professor?
My view is very contrarian to what I've been reading by the pundits in the Globe and Mail and other national media, which are saying, in essence, I'll summarize it very quickly and then I'll explain my contrarian view. It was captured, I thought, most succinctly, completely inaccurately, I believe, by Adam Radwanski in the Globe and Mail. And by the way, I respect Radwanski. I think he's a sharp, good journalist. But he's in the Toronto-Ottawa bubble, and I mean by that bubble that while we're going to go net carbon zero 2050, it's just a slam dunk. It's just a question of willpower. We just got to get rid of the climate deniers or push them aside. And hey, it's all over. It's done. It's fixed. It's all done. And I believe that these are people flying at 50,000 feet, living on fumes. I mean by that they're not looking, and I won't go into all the facts I've quoted to you before. The grid requires massive rebuilding that's going to take literally 50, 70, 100 years because the distance, every street has to be rewired, every house, every building, every school. It's massive. So what my contrarian view is this is not, as Radwanski and many others say, the shot across the bow. He's about to take on climate change and radically rebuild and reorient the American economy. I argue exactly the opposite.
Okay.
I mean by that Biden's first off a very centrist person, has been all his life, grew up in Scranton. I've driven through Scranton on the way to Hilton Head every year. It's a tough, wonderful people, but very tough working class town, very down to earth. And he's very centrist. But part of the base of the Democratic Party are the progressive base, and I'm talking now Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, AOC, and they're very left. They want to, go on and attack Wall Street and attack all the companies, and they think that profit's really a terrible thing, and they want to shut down the oil companies. I mean, it's very radical stuff. I've read their speeches, believe me, okay? So they supported him very loyally, and he knows he has to pay them off with something, and he knows he cannot accede to their demands on other policy areas such as let's go after all the tech companies and go after all the Wall Street companies. So he needs to use slang English, he's got to throw the dog a bone. He's got to give them something to say, I'm with you.
Right.
I like you. Thank you for supporting me. And so he's doing it on day one. to buy himself political capital with his own base. Now, I'm not trying to say that the progressives are the totality of the Democratic base. They're not. This has been well documented in some wonderful articles in the New York Times arguing there's really three different bases or parties or factions in the Democratic Party, and the progressives are only one faction, and they're not even the majority faction, but they're very loud and they're very vocal, and they have access to the media, and so that's why we hear about Bernie Sanders all the time and Elizabeth Warren, even though that's not the mainstream of American opinion. So that's the first reason. But secondly, there's a second reason I think he's willing to go along with it, is that it's purely symbolic, and it makes, believe it or not, the oil and gas companies happy, because the Keystone was going to bring another 850,000 barrels of oil from Canada into the U.S. market. There's already a glut of oil, and that was only going to do, if anything, drive down oil prices. So this is a subtle form of protectionism at the same time. And thirdly, and this is the genius of his decision, it's going to impose costs on who? American voters? Of course not. It's going to impose the cost of shutting down the Keystone on Canadians, and Canadians do not vote in American elections.
Right.
So this decision is purely symbolic. And just to finish off my thought,
sure.
Because I think this is important, there are all kinds of people saying, this is, I was debating an environmentalist last night on CTV, and saying, this is the first step in bringing climate change to an end. In other words, shutting down global warming.
To an end. Okay.
And do you know, and I looked up the stats because I'm evidence-based. Did you know, according to PHMSA, which is the pipeline regulator of the United States government in the DOT, the Department of Transportation, they own this regulator, so to speak, as part of their bureaucracy.
Right.
There are 2.5 million oil and gas miles of oil and gas pipelines in the U.S. as we speak, actively pushing oil and gas all over the country. And I will predict with absolute confidence that President-elect Biden is not going to shut down 1 yard, let alone 1 mile, of those 2.5 million miles. The idea that he's going to take on the pipeline industry or the oil and gas industry that accounts for millions of jobs, and I looked this one up too, have operations, oil and gas companies, in 32 of the 50 U.S. states. The idea that they're going to go after this industry is just preposterous nonsense. It's not going to happen because Biden wants to be reelected. He doesn't want to get annihilated in the off-year elections 2 years from now.
Right.
And there's going to be lots of people in the U.S. Congress, including the Senate, where 98 of the 100 senators are multimillionaires. And they're not about to shut down an industry that is so vital to the United States. So, yes, it's going to hurt us. He doesn't care. We don't vote for them. And it's purely symbolic to send a message to these people that loyally supported him in the election, saying, I love you, I like you.
Yeah, and it's going to coincide with re-entering the Paris Climate Accord.
Yeah,
right. It's kind of like a 1-2. It's kind of like a 1-2 punch. Obama. You want to be, I guess, if you're an American Democrat, you want to be seen as doing something about fossil fuels and climate change.
That's right.
And, there's the Canadian tar sands, and aren't they the perfect target?
Exactly.
Right? Why damage your own industry? I keep reminding people, the great American energy boom, the United States, the world's largest oil producer, the world's largest natural gas producer.
That's right.
This did not begin under President Trump, okay?
That's right.
This began under Barack Obama.
Yes.
The oil and gas bonanza started when Barack Obama was president.
Yes.
He was there for 8 years, professor. He never brought in a carbon tax, even though he was viewed as a great environmentalist. There was never any American federal government carbon tax, unlike what we have here in Canada. Crude oil production in the United States during the Obama years increased 80%. It went from 5 million barrels a day to 9 barrels a day. It was the most oil. It was the most oil production in the United States in 50 years. And yet it's strange that Obama and Joe Biden was vice president. Of course, they're viewed as like the happy left-wing eco-warriors. It's kind of bizarre.
And one more point. I don't want anyone to suggest that I'm saying they're going to do absolutely zero on it. What they're going to do, and I'm talking the Biden administration, will be symbolic stuff. Symbolic stuff meaning they're not going to go after the 2.5 million miles of pipelines in the States. They are not going to go after oil and gas. They're not going to do a carbon tax. So what are they going to do? Well, they're going to do symbolic stuff. They'll probably continue to go after coal because there's a widespread agreement that coal is beyond the pale. It's the dirtiest of the filthiest of the dirty, and more importantly, most of the power producers in the States that have used coal have switched in the last 10 years because the economics is such that natural gas is now significantly cheaper than coal. So they can come out and announce a ban on coal, symbolic because it's almost no one's using it. There's still a small percentage, but they can give them subsidies to convert. They will announce, I'm sure, automobile subsidies for electric cars. So they'll do that kind of stuff that's not coercive. It's, we're incenting you. Here's some money. Go buy yourself an electric car. It'll be symbolic so they can announce it and do lots of press conferences with photo ops, but they're not going to do fundamental change. The numbers in the States, the energy industry is far larger as a percentage in the U.S. than it is in Canada. And it's in not one state. In Canada, it's really in one province called Alberta. In the U.S., when you look at the stats, it's quite astonishing. It's very diversified across. I mean, Pennsylvania, when Biden in the election campaign
that's the shale revolution.
Pennsylvania went crazy.
Yeah, that's the shale. But
it's still part of the oil and gas industry.
Sure.
And he's not going to go after Pennsylvania, his home state. They have fracking in New York State, if you can imagine, the very liberal state. They have oil and gas off California. So the idea that they're going to go after this industry and shut it down like environmentalists are dreaming about, I think is truly it's a pipe dream, no pun intended. It's not going to happen. But he will do symbolic stuff, especially if it's costless, meaning when I say costless, it doesn't generate a backlash from a significant faction within the American voting public, such as voters in Pennsylvania.
Okay. Now, so this is kind of, you're with the Keystone XL pipeline, controversial. There's been, sit-ins and protests and everything else over it. So it's kind of an easy target.
Yes.
Right? But I wonder if it's a sign of things to come with a Biden presidency.
I look at I'm coming at it from I'm not opposed to environmental groups. Some people think
but I guess what I mean is, you use the word protectionism. And, certainly Donald Trump was accused of being a protectionist, right?
Yes.
Make America great again, America first, whatever. Well, Joe Biden has Buy American.
Yes, for sure.
And has made many promises to labor organizations in the United States, for example.
Yeah, Biden's going to be a vastly kindler, vastly gentler Trump. And I mean by that, people recoil at such a phrase.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting it's ever going to a racist word will leave Biden's lips. Of course they won't. He will not. He's a very sensitive guy.
Yeah.
But what I mean is on his economic stuff, he's going to be every bit as protectionist as Trump. He doesn't want the Republicans to have an opening in the next election where they can say, see those hoity-toity, university professors that support Biden, they ignored the working class in Ohio and rural Pennsylvania and rural upstate New York. He's not going to let that happen. Biden is way too smart and too experienced as a politician. He's been in politics for 50 years. He's got more experience than anybody. And he's not going to let that happen just because there's some crazy far-left progressives in the Democratic Party who don't understand that, from the urban downtown core of New York City or one of the big cities. He's going to do a lot of balancing. He's going to do a lot of, a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, grab the center, hug the center. And he is not going to do that kind of radical stuff. He'll throw the occasional bone to the dog, subsidies for electric cars and that sort of thing. But I wouldn't be surprised if he goes after coal, because coal, it's now acceptable to go after coal because coal has shrunk in importance so much.
Yeah, but I'm just wondering.
Oil or gas.
I'm just wondering, and I said earlier this week, Canadians, see more of themselves in a person like Joe Biden than they do in Donald Trump. I'm sure you would agree with that, right?
Absolutely.
But that doesn't mean that all of these so-called what I would call irritants go away.
Absolutely.
Right? There are still, if anything, they may intensify. It doesn't mean that the Americans are suddenly going to say, for example, one of your favorite topics that we talk about on the program, it doesn't mean that Americans are all of a sudden going to embrace Canada's supply-managed agriculture sector, for example, right?
Exactly.
Or
in fact, the best way I think to understand the States versus Canada, because there's huge similarities, but there are differences, and I think you could summarize it just in one phrase or sentence. Canadians are a center-left culture, and the United States, the Americans, are a center-right culture. I have had emails from professors and other people who, listen to you and I talk, and they just express they're mystified by how those that know this, that, for example, 36% of Latinos voted for Trump the second time. And they said, how is this even possible? Well, the answer is very clear. I taught in California at Cal State Monterey for 2 years, and I had a very significant minority population that were Latino, probably 45% of my students, almost half. And what I learned very quickly, because you met the parents, it was a small campus, small university, and they came out to events where they did outreach to the parents and the community. I learned that Latinos are very small C conservative. They're very pro-family, hard work, and that sort of thing, very patriotic. And that's part of this center-right culture. You see it in the football games with the flag and the flyovers with the jets and the military, and some people mock that. But the American culture is more center-right than we are. We're more liberal. They're more center-right. I'm not trying to say that they're bad. They have a different culture, but it is more pro-business than in Canada. We're much more pro-government. We like big government. We have no problem with big taxes, carbon taxes. The Americans are much more individualistic, center-right, leave me alone, want to own my house, and support the flag and that sort of thing. At the same time that they're more, I think they're becoming more and more socially liberal. Look at Black Lives Matter, for example, and there's more and more support for it. But on economic issues, bread and butter issues, jobs and that sort of thing, I think Americans, including Democrats, are much more small C conservative than we are.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about the political center when we come back with Professor Ian Lee. He's with the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. He's talked in the past about, red Tories and blue Liberals and the political center, and whether Mr. Trudeau has taken his Liberal Party so far to the left that the center might be right up there for grabs. And that's why you see 600-word statements being issued by the leader of the opposition, Aaron O'Toole, because the center is right there. Right there to be had. We'll pick it up on that with Professor Ian Lee when we come back. Rob Snow Show here on City News.
No Nut Butter is a business where we make allergy-friendly spreads, so alternatives to peanut butter, Nutella, or those kind of things that kids and adults like to have on toast or on a banana or on an apple, and aren't really available to people with severe food allergies or allergies to the top allergens. When you're an allergy parent, you read every label because you need to know the details of every ingredient that's in the products that you're going to feed your kid. So we found that a lot of the products that we were looking at had may contain warnings, which we can't have, and had just so many ingredients in them that you don't know if there's a weird unknown ingredient that is kind of disguised under a different name. So we started No Nut Butter so that we would have the opportunity to have products that were safe and free from the top allergens and had really simple ingredients in them so that you would know exactly what you were feeding your kids. We make 4 different products at No Nut Butter. So we make a pumpkin seed butter, which is our alternative to peanut butter. So it only has pumpkin seeds, roasted pumpkin seeds, and some kind of oil in it. So we usually use corn oil or olive oil. And then we make what we call Choco Pumpkin, and it is our alternative to a chocolate hazelnut spread. So it is our pumpkin seed butter with our chocolate spread, so very much chocolate hazelnut spread. We make a coconut caramel. So It is coconut milk and sugar, and it is our kind of vegan option for caramel, because typically caramel has lots of butter and dairy in it. And then we make an apple butter, which is apples and cinnamon and sugar, and that's it. We do also make a sugar-free pumpkin seed butter option because we have some diabetics and just some people who don't want sugar in their lives, and so we do offer that, but you'd have to custom order it. There are very strict rules around producing products, particularly nut-free products. You aren't allowed to cook in your own kitchen, which makes a lot of sense. If you have a dog, you don't want to cook in your own kitchen. But from a nut standpoint, it's just making sure that you have everything really clean and organized. So we cook all of our products in a commercial kitchen so that we can keep all of those health and safety procedures really tight and together. My personal business started a company called Shop Local Ontario during the pandemic, so we were pretty well equipped to go forward into the pandemic in a world of e-commerce and transacting online. You can find us online at nonutbutter.com, or you can find us on Facebook, No Nut Butter, or on Instagram at No Nut Butter.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
We're back with Professor Ian Lee with us every week here on the Rob Snow Show. He's with the Sprout School of Business at Carleton University, where he is a professor of management. And Professor, I have to ask you, actually, when was the last time you were actually in a classroom, in a physical classroom?
Well, physical classroom would have been last March. And
last March.
It was halfway through the presentations of March, because I have student presentations doing their strategic analysis.
Oh, yes.
It's the most exciting part for me, because I see these bright young kids. I mean, they really are. And they're full of energy, and they're full of enthusiasm, and they are the future of our country. And that's why I'm so optimistic about the long-term future of our country. And then they present, and you see the learning that's occurred. And that was, we were told on, I think it was a Friday morning, it would have been about March 10, 14, if my memory serves me well. And, as of Monday, you're no longer in the class. Boom. It was that
just
fast.
like that. Right.
It wasn't like 2, 3, 4 weeks from now, get ready. It was in 72 hours from now, you are no longer in the classroom. Get on your computer and figure out how to use Zoom. We didn't have any warning. Right. There was no lead time.
Yeah.
And that was the last time. And I've been doing Zoom ever since. And, it has its pluses and minuses. It really does. I'm not all negative on it. I actually think that the world post-COVID for education, university education, is going to be a hybrid model where we do some online and some in the classroom. I think that that's where it'll go. But I'm not predicting the end of universities, although I do think that it's going to have an impact on universities and in terms of enrollment and that sort of thing. But I think we'll be moving to a hybrid model ultimately, and I mean ultimately fall or next winter.
So let's talk about Aaron O'Toole, the leader of the opposition, released a statement this week, 600-word statement. And he's like, whether it's dragging, kicking, or screaming the Conservative Party closer to the center. Would you agree? Closer to the center? Yeah?
Yes.
More of a kind of a progressive Conservative Party than a Conservative Party, right?
And it was long overdue.
Oh, okay. It's interesting you feel that way. Do you think the center is wide open and there for the taking because the Liberals have moved so far to the left?
Yes, I do.
Okay. All right. Okay.
I think that the Trudeau is not Biden. A lot of people say, they're simpatico philosophically and intellectually. I just think that's a load of phooey. I think Justin Trudeau, because of his extraordinary privilege, my experience, just a quick sidebar, Rob, and this is important, my experience all through my adult life is the more privileged you are, the more progressive you are. And I say that as someone who's lived in the glebe for over 30 years and I've been in the university for over 30 years. Most professors in most universities, at least every university I've ever come in contact with, are overwhelmingly what we would call progressive. And they're in what I call the progressive bubble or the progressive privilege bubble, because they don't come in contact with ordinary people. That's why it's so easy for many, many academics to quietly sneer at people that go to Walmart. And they do. I'm speaking truth to power, people, okay? And they don't realize that ordinary people have ordinary incomes, and they have to, make sacrifices, and they have to cut corners. They don't live in that rarefied world. Well, Trudeau was at the top of the top of the top of the top of the rarefied world, born into 24/6 to a multi-millionaire, because his grandfather, sold a chain of extremely profitable gasoline service stations to a company called Exxon. That's a fossil fuel company, by the way. Largest company in the world for over a half a century, still is, by the way. And I'm not faulting Exxon. And so he's lived in this privileged world, and I think that he doesn't realize that there's large numbers of people that don't think like him. And he thinks that what he's doing is the center. I believe that that's what Trudeau thinks. He thinks that he's going to move the Liberal Party over because he thought it was becoming too conservative, and he doesn't think that that's where the center is. I think he's completely wrong. I think the center is we're much more small C, and I'm talking to people that live in the burbs, where the majority of Canadians live. The majority of Canadians do not live in the most privileged communities in Canada called Rockcliffe or the Glebe or Westboro or Rosemont or Outremont or Point Grey in Vancouver. These are the most privileged. These are the ones that still get the mail to their door because Mr. Trudeau ensured that they continue to get door-to-door delivery. 80% of Canadians don't have door-to-door delivery. They're the people out in the burbs. They're the ordinary folks. And I think that where the Conservative Party went off the rails in the last few years is that they started to cater to their own base just as much as the minority of the Conservatives who are very, very conservative, just as Trudeau is now going over to the minority in the Liberal Party who are very, very liberal. We call them progressives. And I think that under Scheer they made a huge mistake, and Trudeau is doing it in the opposite direction. And I think that O'Toole understands this. And so he wants to remind everybody, I won't say rebrand, because I think the Conservative Party always had a progressive center, a conservative center. And he is trying to re-establish that in the minds of Canadians so that they realize it's not this party that the Liberals and NDP try to brand as this far-right extreme party, that there are millions of Canadians who think along those lines, who are, they believe in markets, and they believe in competition, and they believe in the private sector, and so I think that what O'Toole is doing is long overdue.
Oh, okay.
And he's got to keep re-emphasizing that. I have friends who are very religious right conservatives, against women's right to choose and so forth. I respect them enormously, but they're wrong. I don't mean that they're wrong to hold those views. They're wrong to try to inject that debate and bring it back. The Supreme Court has ruled. The debate is over. There is no more debate on gay rights. There is no more debate on women's right to choose. It is over. And there's no debate on bringing back capital punishment. It is over. So let's stop talking about it. And he is trying to do that. And I know this enrages some people I've talked to about this, but they just don't accept that the Supreme Court has ruled definitively, and we're not going to bring back or overturn those decisions. So it's over. Let's talk about other things.
Okay. All right. We have to wrap it up on that point. Very interesting discussion this morning, Professor.
Yes.
Thank you again. We'll speak next week.
My pleasure.
Yeah, Professor Ian Lee, Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. Talkback Hour is coming up. I want to talk about vaccine rollouts. Derek Sloan, 750-1310 is our call-in line right now here on City News.
News in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, January 19th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and Smiths Falls, minus 13 degrees. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. The City of Ottawa providing an update on how it's handling its COVID-19 vaccination rollout campaign. It follows a federal government announcement there would be a delay in shipments of the Pfizer vaccine coming into our country. City News reporter Alex Gouge now with more from the city's Board of Health chair.
The city's anticipating to get about 50% of the vaccines it originally expected, but there's no word on how many doses or exact delivery time for the coming weeks. Board of Health Chair Keith Egli explains what the city's priority for this week's incoming shipment is.
It looks like what we'll be doing is primarily we'll be going back and providing second doses to individuals that have received their first doses because we don't want to lose the efficacy of the first dose.
He says once the vaccine is in the city, there is a very robust plan to get it out to the public. Egli adds Ottawa is starting to see the positive effects of the Boxing Day lockdown, but feels it's too soon to see an impact from the stay-at-home order. Alex Gouge, City News.
Now, as our province seems to have hit the COVID plateau, as long as we abide by measures in place, Britain is now facing a growing resurgence of COVID-19. It has seen lockdown measures reimposed right across the country.
Currently, around 38,000 COVID patients are in UK hospitals. As Health Secretary Matt Hancock says,
that is the highest that it's been throughout the pandemic. And someone is admitted to hospital every 30 seconds.
Per capita, the UK has the highest COVID death rate in the world. And because of that, any lockdown easing looks right now like a distant dream. Tom Rivers, ABC News, London.
City News Time at 10:02. Now the forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Well, just a light and variable wind today, but we've got cold temperatures and it'll feel a bit colder than the temperature indicates. A high today, -7, some flurries at times. Tonight, cloudy, a few flurries, -12, and tomorrow, sun and cloud, the high only -9. For today, the high, -7.
And right now in Ottawa and Smiths Falls, -13 degrees. Ottawa police out with a recap of their festive ride checks between November 26 and January 2nd. They stopped about 4,000 vehicles and laid 18 charges. Now, 6 of those were for impaired driving, 12 for having cannabis or alcohol readily available. 3 people had their licenses suspended. In that same time period, Ottawa police nabbed 48 additional drivers with impaired driving and suspended the licenses of 10 people for either 3 or 7 days. The National Capital Commission is looking for details on installing electric vehicle charging stations at various parking lots around Ottawa and Gatineau. Officials with the commission say it's part of their sustainable development strategy. This initiative aims to reduce carbon emissions, support renewable and low-carbon energies, as well as the development of clean technologies. The NCC hopes to install 20 vehicle charging stations in Ontario and Quebec by the end of the year. Well, there are fears right-wing extremists, like ones who stormed the U.S. Capitol, may try to impersonate police officers or the military in order to breach security during the inauguration of President-elect Joe Biden tomorrow. And these numbers show the potential for a threat. It's one reason the FBI has urgently targeted hundreds of riot suspects. Acting U.S. Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen says there have been 200,000 tips from the public and more than 100 arrests already. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
The big story today is not nobody Derek Sloan, soon to occupy history's dustbin. It is the darn vaccination situation in this country. Wouldn't you agree that this is the biggest story in Canada? Because of the way vaccines are being rolled out in this country? I mean, let's get real here. The only way we get our lives back, the only path to economic recovery, the single most important factor in returning to whatever normal is going to be after all of this is said and done is what? It's the vaccine. And in this country, it's not going well. And we shouldn't pretend otherwise, and we shouldn't waste a whole lot of oxygen on Aaron O'Toole's attempt to get rid of Derek Sloan, which is the right thing to do. The vaccine rollout program is not going well, and Aaron O'Toole and Derek Sloan have nothing to do with it. That's on the Trudeau government. It's on the Trudeau government. And the blame rests with Prime Minister Trudeau and his cabinet ministers. They had the big job. Okay, it's a big job. Everybody understands that. Buy vaccines, get them here. As many as possible, as soon as possible. And can anyone out there really with a straight face say the Trudeau government's doing a good job at that? When you look at some of the other countries, we went through all the data yesterday, okay? Some of our peer countries, like the United States, like the United Kingdom, you can't, okay? You can't. We're doing better than some, but we're badly trailing others. And the news stories today from all across the country only confirm this. They highlight this. When you take a look at them as a collective, you can go from one end of the country to the other. The story is the same story. Lots of people ready to be vaccinated, lots of people mobilized to do vaccinations, facilities secured, lots of plans put in place at the local level by provincial officials, by municipal officials. But there's just what? Not nearly enough vaccine to go around. Like, let me do a little kind of cross-country check-in for you this morning. From the Vancouver Sun this morning, for example. Headline, BC tweaks vaccination plan as dose numbers drop over the next month. Quote, Dr. Bonnie Henry said on yesterday, that the province would receive 60,000 fewer doses of Pfizer vaccine over the next few weeks. 60,000 fewer doses of Pfizer vaccine over the next few weeks. Okay. Vancouver Sun. Calgary Herald this morning. Alberta will run out of vaccine by Tuesday. That's today. Okay. Today is Tuesday, right? Last time I said Alberta. Not a dose to be found after today. Regina, CBC Regina. Vaccines will continue to be administered as received. As received. With deliveries cut in half. Winnipeg Free Press. Vaccine supply delay forces province to change plans. Montreal Gazette. Worried seniors remain in the dark about vaccine schedule. Bloomberg News, concern in Atlantic Canada hotspot, New Brunswick, which reported 25 new cases, remains at the second highest pandemic alert level. I mean, from one end of the country to the other, this is the story. Not enough vaccine. Ladies and gentlemen, this is supposed to be the light at the end of the tunnel. Right? But now a lot of people are wondering, how long is this tunnel? Is that light bulb burnt out? When do I get to see the end of this mysterious tunnel? Toronto Star. 3 provinces pausing first dose of vaccinations because of Pfizer shortage. Okay, let me repeat that. Shortage. It's January 19th. We are not talking about how Canada was hoarding all of the vaccine and how everybody was going to be vaccinated 5 times over. No, what do we have now? Shortage. We have a shortage of vaccine. CTV News. Ontario's first major COVID-19 vaccination site will pause after just 5 days in operation due to supply shortage. They opened the Metro Convention Center in Toronto. It's supposed to be a vaccination center because there are no conventions happening until everybody's vaccinated. So the convention center is now a vaccination center. Well, at least it is for 5 days. It's going to be closed after 5 days because they're going to be out of vaccine. Quote, anyone with an appointment at the clinic from January 23rd on should expect their appointment will be canceled. And then you're unfortunate enough, if you read a column like Heather Malick's recent column in the Toronto Star, published just a few days ago, and this is actually what she wrote, pinning all of the blame on Premier Ford and Rick Hillier. It's their fault. She wrote this like 5-6 days ago. The problem in Ontario is not the vaccines, of which there are plenty, she wrote. The problem is that Ontario is not reacting with urgency and speed to the need for inoculation, end quote. The problem is not vaccines, of which there are plenty. Heather Malick writes in Canada's largest circulated newspaper. Oh, really? Do you have a secret stash of Pfizer vaccine, Heather, that we don't know about? Maybe a deep freezer somewhere in your basement? People writing stuff is not even close to being true. Not even close to being true. Of which there are plenty, she says. Vaccines, of which there are plenty. Look, according to our World In data that is keeping track of all this vaccine stuff in real time, the 7-day rolling average for the entire country of Canada is 35,760 doses per day. Doses per day. Doses per day. And Pfizer and Moderna are 2-dose vaccines. But the scientists have told me on my program here, you do get some immunity after just 1 dose. So why don't we do some nice round numbers here? We are on track, let's say, current rate, with at least 1 dose. We'll do 250,000 Canadians a week. That would be a little more than 13 million people for the entire year 2021. Canada has a population of 38 million people, according to Statistics Canada, as of the end of 2020. So at the current rate, just to give 1 dose of vaccine to every Canadian, if that was our goal, would take 2.9 years. And now the delivery of one of the 2-dose vaccines, the Pfizer vaccine, has been cut in half for an entire month. So you can throw all these estimates out the window. It is not a success story. And these are the decisions made by one level of government, the federal government. The federal government is in charge of procuring vaccines, approving and procuring vaccines. And it was reported just in the last week that the Trudeau government passed up the chance to exercise an option on 16 million doses of the much easier to distribute Moderna vaccine. And wouldn't you love to know why? This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Papa Jack was started 14 years ago, really by accident more than anything. A friend of mine had bought a grocery store. A popcorn machine was in there. He didn't want it. I ended up by buying it. My family thought I was nuts. When I first said, come and pick up this popcorn machine, my son said, what the heck for? I won't use exact words. But anyway, we started, and it just kept on growing and growing. But at the time, I was the only one selling popcorn in Ottawa. But we persevered as a family, and here we are. So it's been very, very rewarding for my family and myself. And to see our brand name, Papa Jack, and Papa Jack came out of, I wanted something that was going to be very bilingual. So Papa, and then in Ontario, everybody called me Jack, even though my name is Jacques. In Quebec, it's fine, it's Jacques, but in Ontario, it was always Jack. So we married the two together, Papa Jack. With the store that we have on Thurston Drive, it basically, the factory's in the back. If you come into the store, you can see how the popcorn is being made during the week. So it adds an extra layer of, you can see the sanitation, you can see how we do it. It's not like making popcorn. Most people thought when I started this, I was making popcorn in my garage or in my basement. No, never did. It was started in this building, in the back of the building, and then we kept growing and growing until what we have now. My daughter and my son came up with a brilliant idea to do a fundraiser online. So basically all people have to do is to register here, and we give them a special code number. And with that code number, they tell their friends or their neighbors, everybody, to buy online from us with that code number. And then at the end of each period, could be 2 weeks, could be a month, then we'll pay them a 20% of all the businesses that we got through that code number. One thing I'd like to say is thank you to all the Ottawa people who have supported us and support local businesses. It sometimes people, they talk about buying locally. Now it becomes that much more important to buy locally, to support your local businesses, because not too many of them are going to survive this. We're fortunate that we're so far so good.
At 613-750-1310.
Now, Rob Snow Show continues.
Richard, you're up first this morning in Orleans. Morning, Richard.
Rob, first-time caller.
Thank you for calling, Richard. It's a great honor to have you on the show, sir.
Thank you. I'm a bit nervous here, but the reason I'm calling is that I'm a good Canadian. I stayed at home.
Good for you.
3 of my friends, couples, one from Carp, one from Canada, and one from New Brunswick, they flew in to Florida, and they received their COVID shots last week.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow.
And I agree with what you were saying earlier. All of this is going on the head of Ford and not Trudeau. Trudeau's having his liberal spin, and that's why he really doesn't care, because very, very few headlines are saying what Trudeau didn't do for us Canadians. And that's why a lot of people don't understand the difference between the role of the federal government versus a provincial. And on top of that, what you were saying about the newspaper article that was saying there's all kinds of...
That was in the Toronto Star. Now that's a column. Yeah, it's a column. It's it's her opinion. It's Heather Malick's opinion. But 6 days ago, there she is writing, "Oh, there's lots of vaccine. There's lots of vaccine." No, there's not lots of vaccine. Do you even read the news?
Well, this is it. But for the Toronto Star to allow that to be published, I mean, keep in mind, Rob, don't you remember several months ago, Trudeau gave millions of dollars to the newspapers, and one of them had to be the Toronto Star. Now, do you not think that?
Well, I don't. Far be it for me, but the fact is, look, with that particular columnist, there's nothing a liberal can do wrong, and there's nothing a conservative can do right. So.
That's right.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you very seldom read or see anything on news. We watch CTV News every night, and there's very little negative blowback on the Liberal government and Trudeau. And in this case, I mean, my God, all he had to do was to buy the vaccines. And then the Liberal spin was, we got so much vaccine.
Oh, we've got so much vaccine, you're not going to be able to sway a cat without hitting a vial of vaccine somewhere.
And not only that, we're going to give the excess to
poorer countries. Sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, again, he wants to get he's always talking about being on the map, Canada being on the map, and his name being there, and that's what he was trying to get at.
What?
But the thing is, you have to look after Canadians first, and he's not doing that, and the media is not reporting that, which I think is important, because that's the only way we're going to get pressure on him to do something.
I mean, for example, the Moderna vaccine has been approved for almost a month. Okay, we're in a city of 1 million people. Okay, second largest city in the largest province in the country. Not a single dose of the Moderna vaccine has even been shipped to Ottawa. A month after it's been approved.
This is it. And why did he not accept the 16 million doses?
Well,
I mean, there has to be.
I don't know why. I don't know why. Yeah, it's a very good question, because thank you, Richard. Very good call. I hope you'll call back sometime, because it's much easier to handle. It's much easier to ship. It doesn't require minus 70 degrees Celsius to store. For all of these reasons, it's very perplexing. Is there more to the story? I don't know. I wouldn't speculate on that. Des, thank you for calling, Des. You're on the air.
Morning, Rob.
Morning.
Yes, well, it sort of got to me when I was listening to the news. 8% don't think Ford is doing a proper job. Well, that made me think a way back. Maybe what that 8% would like to have Buffalo Bob back again.
Okay.
I mean, where everything went over to cross the border. And, well, the other thing is, Mr. Ford, I'm probably going to give him a call today. But anyway, stop propping up Trudeau. I know what he was saying. I know it's a political game sort of thing. That,
I see. You think he's being too easy on Mr. Trudeau.
Oh, my God, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
With comments like, he's working his back off and, these kinds
of
things.
That got me right there. I had to stop dead while I was pacing around.
Right.
I thought working his back off.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you. Well, no, I can't tell you. But anyway.
Okay. You can't tell me on the radio anyway.
That's right. And, so, the other things that this 8%, well, I don't know. There's a lot of people saying, listening on your show. Now, probably some of them sit on the other side of the fence.
Maybe, yeah.
The way I put it, not them all. There's a couple.
Right.
But anyway, I would wish that the people that, that do come on your show, if they know these people or anything about it, try to educate them a little bit. Just a little bit. Like Ford is doing the best he can with what he hasn't got.
Well, I like the way Councillor Eglai put it, because Councillor Eglai, for example, he's the chair of the Board of Health, right? So this Pfizer delay impacts not just what the provincial government can do, but every municipal government all across the country who have had to, secure space in community centers and make sure there are nurses who can staff, city-run and municipally run long-term care homes. All of these things, right? All of these plans are made at the local level, and everything has been disrupted. And he said, look, you can be a carpenter and have all the tools you want, but if you don't have the lumber, what good is it, right?
Well, that is right on. But one other thing, too, that really got me upset, too, is the fact that now, what is our Prime Minister doing, sending people over to China to find out about that disease? I think it's a little bit late. Well, maybe they brought a present for the leader over there. I think that would be more like
Okay, yeah. I don't want to get too off track with that.
No,
I don't want to get too off track with that today, Des. But thank you for your call, okay? Thank you for your call. Good call. Up next, 750-1310. There's a free line. First time this morning. Dave, Ottawa. Dave, you're on the air, sir.
Yeah, I've been, thank God we're talking about this finally, because I've been on this since mid-December, this lack of vaccine.
Right.
People forget that he also Trudeau had the opportunity to purchase up to 100 million doses of Pfizer, and he turned it down, and the states snapped them all up. That was back in November, and he turned that down as well. And as far as Ford and the rest of the premiers, they're letting Trudeau off the hook like crazy, along with the media. For example, last night, Lisa LaFlamme, that was the lead story about the lack of vaccine, and then she throws her little liberal comment in that, at least we can take solace in the fact that we've procured the most vaccines per capita. Well, big deal. That means nothing, because 3/4 of those vaccines may never come into fruition anyways.
Mm.
I mean, it's Trudeau is getting away with murder, and he's very, very astute politically, and O'Toole has got to get off the mat and start fighting back. Enough is enough, as well as Singh. He's got to get off the mat. Let's start spilling out the facts, the truth that's going on here. And last week, Lowell Green mentioned about he was worried about mutation of virus and that the vaccine may not work in the future. And sure enough, there's an article on that today. So that's on Global.
There's an article on that where, sir?
In Global News.
Oh, Global News. Okay, yeah. I have not seen that.
The fact that the scientists are now worried that the virus is mutating more, and that since the vaccines are not getting out fast enough, Canada is at risk. So
okay, well, I'll look for that. I have not read that. I will read it. It will be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see what they say, because my understanding is and look, I'm not a scientist, but my understanding based on what I've read over the last several months about the mRNA vaccine is that it's much more flexible than, say, the traditional vaccinations that to make changes to mutating strains of virus, as I understand it.
Yeah, I read that as well.
Yeah. Okay. But all right, Dave. But you think? Look, I think a lot of us are coming around to the idea. You know, we can read graphs and charts and tables as well as anyone. We're not dummies.
No.
Okay. So when we see that Canada's vaccination rate per 100 of population is at 1.44, and the United States is at 3.7, and the UK's at 6 point something, and Israel's at 27, and the UAE is at 19, we can come to our own conclusion and say, hey, you know what? We're not doing very well here.
Yeah, but my liberal friends will just say it's the province's fault. They deflect it back to the province. They had it in the freezer, they never got it out. And you know, this problem would have come up even sooner. Had the Ontario provincial government, remember they took a week off between Christmas and New Year's, and that where people were upset about that.
Yeah. Well, maybe the situation would be even worse now. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, we'll be right back. This is halftime already. Rob Snow Show here on City News.
News in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, January 19th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, minus 12, in Smiths Falls, minus 11 degrees. And here's what's making news this hour. With a caveat, there is another drop in COVID cases in Ontario. Health Minister tweeting a new number this morning of 1,913 cases. It does come from about 34,500 tests, but there is an underreporting at Toronto Health, which does have 550 new cases. There's also 346 cases in Peel and 235 new infections in York. There are also 46 more deaths province-wide. Now, locally, 41 new cases in Ottawa, 14 in the Eastern Ontario Health Unit. There were no new cases in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, but 2 new cases of COVID in the Renfrew County Health Unit. With another drop, does this mean a lifting of restrictions in Ontario sooner rather than later? The Chief Medical Officer of Health said yesterday, until the rate drops below 1,000 new cases a day, restrictions will be staying. Dr. David Williams also says the number of people in ICU should drop to about 150 first. Right now, there are 395 people in those units province-wide. Prime Minister Trudeau expected to face questions about dwindling supplies of the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine across Canada. Pfizer is trying to double production of the vaccine to close to 2 billion this year, but will temporarily curb production at a plant in Belgium to make the needed upgrades. Pfizer Canada says ours is not the only country that will experience delivery delays in the short term, and it is working closely with governments on allocation of the doses it does have. City News Time 10:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
And for people who want to call and talk about Derek Sloan and say how wrong I am about Derek Sloan, if you want a friend in politics, get a dog. I wonder if Derek Sloan has a dog, because I don't think he has many friends. Not among his colleagues on Parliament Hill anyway, who long ago had seen enough of his dog and pony show. And for that reason, he's on the outs. Look, I made no secret. I'm not a fan of Derek Sloan. Hope to see him kicked out of the Conservative Party long before this. But anyway, the end seems near. You might think it's unfair. That's fair enough. But you may also want to ask yourself, especially, my friends on the right side of things, there is an election coming, you may have heard, soon. And do you really want the Conservatives to be preoccupied with a goofball like Derek Sloan sucking up all the oxygen in the room? Or do you want the ballot question to be something else? Like the Liberals and the Liberal Party's response to the pandemic, which is now centered on the rollout of the vaccines. What issue do you think gives the Conservatives the best shot at defeating the Trudeau Liberals? Because to me, when you look at it through that lens, the answer is crystal clear, my friends. So no, I have no issue at all with Aaron O'Toole wanting to rid himself of this problem child. None. My only regret is that he didn't act sooner. And, there's all kinds of speculation. Oh, it was an inside job. The leak about this donation to the Sloan campaign from this notorious white nationalist, it must have come from someone in the Conservative Party. And you know what? Some people might think that's far-fetched. However, Press Progress came across this information. You know what? It's a stroke of luck in my eyes. Now you have a good reason to get rid of someone who has been undermining the Conservative Party's fortunes, undermining the Conservative leader since the end of the party's leadership race. Don't take money from neo-Nazis. It should be an easy test to pass. And now, fine, Derek Sloan can say, I don't know where the $130 came from. Look at the way he spelled his name, whatever. There is another political truth as well. You can only punch someone in the face so many times before they punch you back. And someone has punched back. There's an election coming. And Mr. Trudeau thinks now is the time to strike. His denials are laughable. That he doesn't want an election. Everybody expects him to visit the Governor General, say this minority parliament has come to its natural governing, the end of its natural governing life. I need a new mandate. And Chrystia Freeland's budget is going to serve double duty as the Liberal election platform. So whoever leaked that Derek Sloan info to Press Progress, it doesn't really matter. Because the Liberal war room, I guarantee you, would have discovered it anyway. They're already hard at work trying to dig up dirt that they can throw at their opponents in the upcoming election campaign. So would you rather deal with the Sloan thing now, here in mid-January, or in a few months from now? Say the night before a leaders' debate, for example. When Aaron O'Toole's in full campaign mode, trying to convince the unconvinced that the Conservatives really are a modern, inclusive political party and we can be trusted with running the country. Because look, if the Conservatives make that case, recent history would suggest enough Canadians will vote Conservative. Mr. Harper was Prime Minister for almost 10 years. The issue is when you have to deal with people like Derek Sloan, as Conservatives often do, you're not going to be seen by enough people as a credible alternative to the Liberals. Instead, what you're going to be seen as, you're going to be seen as barbarians at the gate. Think about what Mr. O'Toole has had to put up with from this problem child. O'Toole spends weeks and weeks and weeks nonstop calling out the Liberals on poor vaccine management. Where are the vaccines? Day after day. Why did your government do this dance with China? When will vaccines be approved? When will they arrive? How will they be distributed? All of it. All very important questions, as we're now seeing. Then you wake up to the news. Oh, there's Derek Sloan sponsoring a petition backing anti-vaxxers. Human experimentation. Problem child. And now you have this, the sequel, right? Entirely predictable. Aaron O'Toole, just a day earlier, releases a statement, Conservative Party, modern, inclusive, yada, yada, yada. No room for hate, intolerance. Trying to grow the tent, trying to build a coalition. Hey, guess who took money from a neo-Nazi? Gee, 3 guesses and the first 3 are Derek Sloan. You know, people are willing to vote for change, but they don't want change that's going to freak them out and scare the pants off of them. Hello, hidden agenda, soldiers in the streets. Remember that? Anyway, that's all I have to say about it. I've been pretty clear on where I stand on Derek Sloan and his views. I do not shed any tears at all to see the back end of that guy. Vaccines. Much bigger, more important story than anything Derek Sloan will ever do in his political career. And good morning.
Hi.
Hi.
I am so glad you were talking about this vaccine thing. As a government of a country, your number one job should be the health, welfare, and security of the people in that country. And by not taking steps, that Heather Malik, she makes me crazy that she's allowed to say things like that in print that are out and out lies. It's just ridiculous. The people, and there are liberals who just lap it up, right? Oh, yeah, it's all Ford. It's not Ford's job to get the vaccines. Learn it, live it, realize it. Because Trudeau screwed up. I mean, that Moderna thing. Well, you saw that. You were talking about that Paul Lucas thing, right?
Yes,
the guy
in the Financial Post, yeah.
Yes. I mean, for God's sakes, he said this isn't rocket science. The guy screwed up. He was doing that dance with China. Meanwhile, all the other countries were signing on to Moderna. And here we are with nothing. And, as far as we know, there's no vaccine left in Ontario, other than what they're reserving for people who already had a shot and they're in long-term care. So, I mean, we have to live like this till September. I'm sorry, that's just not good enough because that means our economy can't
Well, I mean,
recover.
that's the best case scenario.
I
That's
know.
the best. We're on pace. I want to repeat this. We're on pace to vaccinate current rate 250,000 people every week. That would be 13 million people by the end of the year. Okay, the
Yeah,
population of the population of Canada is 38 million people.
I know.
Now, young children might not need it, but the population of Canada is 38 million people, right? That's almost 3 years.
I know.
To vaccinate everybody.
This is total incompetence, and more of the media better step up and talk about this because it's just looking bad.
There are lots of media reports about it. That's why I went. I went on media reports from one end of the country to the other, from Vancouver to Atlantic Canada this morning. Let's go to Eric in Barrhaven. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, Rob.
Yes, Eric, go ahead, sir.
Just finished reading, or a little while ago, Diane Francis's column detailing how the Liberals have truly failed us on the vaccine issue. And, you know, I just thank God that Aaron O'Toole brought this up early and forcefully, and I hope he continues down that track. He was short-sighted, blindsided, with 200,000 vaccines that we probably paid an arm and a leg for just to get rid of that story. Now he's proven himself to be correct all along. And what many of us have been saying for years, or for months, that you don't start ordering vaccine in August,
right?
When the world started ordering in May.
Yes.
So we're paying the price for Junior's ineptitude right now. And she points out just a couple things that the two ministers responsible for getting the vaccines in. First was the health minister. The second was the procurement minister.
So Haidu and
Anand.
Yeah.
Well, Haidu is a graphic designer. She has no frickin' idea about the science behind vaccines and vaccine procurement. And what's her name?
Anita Anand.
Yeah. Anand is a lawyer or a law professor, and has only, believe it or not, 1 year of government experience. And she's put in charge of one of the largest files.
Right. What used to be Public Works, basically. Right?
Yes, what used to be. So I get so disappointed about how quickly some of these side stories can take away from what is the critical message here. That the Liberals had a chance to do the right thing and get the job done, and as Francis points out, there is no puddle that the Prime Minister will miss, and he's missed it again. He's stepped square into it, and people will die.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah. I mean, I wonder what he's going to say at 11:15.
Well, you know what?
Right? It's kind of lipstick on a pig at this point, isn't it?
Yeah, lipstick on a pig's still a pig, but it's going to come down, unfortunately, Rob, to the press. The press has to pick up on this. And push him, because he for instance, the other day he said that another 20 million doses have been contracted. Well, the obvious question that should have been asked was, well, where were the first 20 million?
Yeah, sure.
Eh?
Yeah.
And
the governments are great at procuring things, right? But whether it's a vaccine or a war strip or an icebreaker or a fighter jet, we're very good at procuring things. It's the delivery where we kind of fall short when it comes to execution.
Procurement starts with the contract discussions. Somewhere in the middle is a contract, and somewhere down the end is a delivery. So when he talks about procuring 500 million doses, it doesn't mean delivering 500 million doses. It means that on paper, someone has thought about ordering 500 million doses. It hasn't come even close
very good.
to delivering.
Yeah, good points, Eric. Thank you. We'll be right back. There's a few phone lines available there. 750-1310, 750-1310. Ooh, thank goodness for blood pressure medication this morning. Rob Snow Show on City News.
The location is unique.
There's, as you can see, it's open. And we have large windows. You can sit down and you can look outside. And this scene is not many scenes like that in Ottawa anymore with the high buildings. And we have the train station to the west of us. We have the train yards. To the south, we have Saint Laurent Shopping Center, not far from here. And OC Transpo, not far from here. And the train, the light train, again, is not far from here. You can find breakfast. The breakfast, it was 7 or 8 years ago, it was one of the best five restaurants in Ottawa, one of the five best breakfast in Ottawa. 7 or 8 years ago, it was in the Citizen. And our club sandwich is voted by customers the best in town. And the pea soup, too, is voted the best in town. We sell, we make pizza, we make Italian food, Lebanese dishes. Many customers describe it as it has the prices of the 60s, very reasonable prices. And the food, many say the best in town, not me. Many customers say that. It was a shock. It was a shock. And we went from doing well to barely doing very little. We relied heavily on the takeout, and the takeout was not that much. There was some. I hear from many customers that they are willing to come and sit inside. They're not afraid of the spread, as long as we wash our hands, sanitize everything, and wear your mask and keep the distancing. Most or all our customers are okay with that. So they are against the lockdown, They are supporting us a lot. And if it wasn't for the community loyalty, we wouldn't be here today. So I have to thank them for their support so far. It's been great.
The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
I started the program this morning saying 2,500 cases looks like a pretty good number. It looks like progress is being made. Because when the stay-at-home order went into effect, which was a week ago, well, it was announced a week ago, there were 2,900 cases, so in a week down by 11%, and then today's number came out and said 1,900. I was like, wow, that's a really good number. We, below 2,000 again, but then it said, note, due to a technical issue at Toronto Public Health, there is likely an underreporting of cases today. So I wonder what that means for tomorrow's number, whether tomorrow's number is going to be...
Oh, it could be huge.
Really big. Right?
Yeah.
So we're kind of like lurching from extreme to extreme. Okay, we'll get back to the phone lines here. Barry, good morning. You're on City News. Barry, go ahead.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah, hi, Barry. Go ahead, Barry. Yeah.
I think with the vaccines and all this, that Trudeau's delays and all his inept dealings with it, one theory I have that he only wants to deal with the Pfizer vaccine because he's already set up some of his investor friends or whatever companies are delivering this stuff that he's already set them up.
Barry, come on. Let's not get into all of this wild, crazy conspiracy theory stuff that, you really don't have any evidence to back any of that up. Maybe we can just, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, right, Barry? Maybe it's just that they're incompetent. Not necessarily corrupt.
I'm not saying they're corrupt, Rob. I'm just saying if you follow the money.
Barry, come on. All right. Yeah. Okay, Barry. Thank you. I'm just going to move along today, Barry. You call back some other day. Mike in Canada. Go ahead, Mike.
Hi, Rob.
Yeah, hi, Mike. Yeah.
I think with all the problems we're having with the vaccine now, it should be clear that it's time that we rebuilt our own facility to make our own vaccine.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Yeah.
That way we would be able to look after our own first and then help everybody else afterwards. My understanding is that we did have a facility a number of years ago, but somebody decided to sell it.
Well, we did have a facility, many decades ago. We had a facility that was able to domestically produce vaccines, but it's come to light as well in recent weeks that we do have domestic capacity to produce our own vaccines. We domestically produce a flu vaccine every year.
Well, maybe they should start going after the company to...
Well, doesn't it make you wonder why we wouldn't do that?
Well, exactly.
Right?
Because this is not going to be the last pandemic.
I mean, we have a health minister, we have a procurement minister, we have an innovation and science minister. Can't any of these people collaborate and get on the same page and really take a serious deep dive into what is our domestic capacity here?
You would think they would.
You would think. Yeah, you would think.
Being elected by Canadians to look after Canadians, but for some reason they choose not to.
Yeah. So.
It's just beyond me.
Yeah, it's beyond a lot of people. And I wanted to spend some time on this because there's a massive trickle-down effect that is happening here right now. And, we started the show with the chair of the Board of Health here locally. I mean, look at everything we have had to do here locally.
Exactly.
Okay, we've had to make sure we've had the proper human resources. We've had to come up with a priority list. Who is going to get the vaccine? In what facilities? Where is the vaccine going to be stored? What about people making appointments to get vaccines? Are we going to give the first dose to as many people as possible? Or are we going to make sure that we stick to the protocol and we give the first dose and then 3 weeks later we give the second dose? Because some provinces, like the province of Quebec, are not doing that. They've decided to delay the second dose and instead give the first dose to as many people as possible. Because at least that way someone will get a little bit of immunity. It's not ideal, but at least you'll get some immunity out of it, right?
That's right.
So then you get a delay. Then you get a delay. Your shipment is cut in half from the federal government. This affects all the planning at the provincial government and in every municipality from one end of the country to the other.
That's correct.
Incredible. Yeah, it's incredible. And then you read in the news, the Moderna vaccine is much easier to ship. Doesn't need -70.
I thought we bought a pile of it.
Bought a pile of it and had an option to buy 16 million more doses, enough for 8 million people.
And we haven't even had the first shipment yet.
Yeah. None in Ottawa. City of 1 million people, right?
It's all been Pfizer so far.
Well, no, they've sent Moderna to the Northern Territories, sir.
Oh, okay.
Because they don't have the infrastructure with the freezers and whatnot, right?
Exactly.
So,
that makes sense, too.
Yeah, but...
they're part of Canada, and they deserve
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
But, where is it? Where is it?
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you, Mike.
Have we
thank you.
paid for this stuff?
Yeah. Well, okay. Thank you, Mike. Thank you. We've committed to pay for it. Centertown, David. Good morning, David.
Oh, good morning, Rob.
Yeah, go ahead, sir. Yeah.
Just 2 quick points.
Sure.
You were mentioning with another caller, you were sort of anxious to hear what Trudeau was going to how he was going to respond to the vaccine shortage. And I think we know how he's going to respond. He's going to say, we're working hard to get as many vaccines as possible. We procured more than any other country. And it was for the previous government, we wouldn't be having this problem. The usual deflection.
I see. Okay. Yeah.
The other thing was when Rob Ford and gave his press conference for this current lockdown, the more measures last week. I think it was a week ago. When I was watching it, I was looking and I couldn't help but notice that they did not seem to sort of have like the full conviction and passion in what they were saying and what they were trying to lay out for us to do and the lockdown measures. It sort of looked like they were sort of reading from a script. And I'm wondering if perhaps they were advised to do that or told to do that because they were made aware that we were going to have a shortage of vaccine. And we would have to do this. And
that's just speculation on your part. I have no idea. Obviously, I have no idea. Yeah. Okay, David. Thank you. Thank you, sir. One more here, probably two more, actually. Ashton, Maureen. Good morning. Yeah, hi, Maureen.
First-time caller.
Well, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Ashton must be very nice with this snow right now.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I bet you it's wonderful.
Yeah. Just in relation to the man that phoned before 10:30 about hearing the variant could not be covered under the vaccine, Dr. Fauci was on question period on Sunday, and he said the one from South Africa seems to be troublesome, that, they're looking into it further, but it might not be covered under the vaccine. And on Inside Edition last night, they mentioned the same thing, and they added
Inside Edition?
Yes.
Really?
And they announced that not only South Africa, but Brazil might have that same variant that might not be working under the vaccine. Okay. And then hearing your show yesterday about some exemptions on travel, and I believe you mentioned Brazil was one of them. So with that variant that's, not covered under the vaccine.
Look, I have a scientist coming up. Dr. Isaac Bogosh is on Ontario's vaccine task force.
Right.
I'm going to ask him about this.
Oh, that's
He's
great.
right after the news at 11 o'clock.
Yes, because if these people have no exemption coming in from Brazil or even South Africa, that's just, we're starting at day one again.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, last call. We only have a minute. Anna in Ottawa. Anna.
Oh, hi, Rob.
Hi,
where is the outrage, right? I mean, the slow delivery.
I think you're hearing it here, yeah.
Every day that vaccine is delayed means that more vulnerable people are going to die, right?
Yes.
Those people that are in, let's say, the retirement homes, et cetera. And then having to stretch out the time between the injections means that people won't be as protected as they might have been if, the injections were done according to the manufacturer's instructions. And I mean, I was livid with Ford, in Hillier over Christmas when, they stopped over those few days. Even though I voted for Ford, I was livid, but I'm equally livid with the feds about, their failure to deliver. But, my Facebook friends don't seem to be. Like, I usually post like cat stuff on Facebook, recipes, and I get all kinds of likes, and loves and and things.
Sure.
But I posted an article about this late delivery, right? And I just get one acknowledgement. Like, that's it. Like, nobody,
okay.
like,
all
it's
right.
radio silence.
All right. You should stay off Facebook anyway. It's bad for your mental health.
Right.
Okay. Thank you, Anna. Thank you. Yeah, we'll be right back. Rob Snow Show. Dr. Isaac Bogosh is going to join us, part of Ontario's Immunity Task Force. So many questions for him. Hopefully we'll clear a few things up. This is City News.
one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, January 19th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, minus 12. In Smiths Falls, minus 11. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Another drop in COVID cases in Ontario, but with a caveat. The health minister tweeting a new number today of 1,913 cases from around 34,500 tests. But there's an underreporting at Toronto Health, which does have 550 new cases, but that 1913 number may not be accurate. There are also 46 more deaths in Ontario. Locally, 41 new cases in Ottawa, 14 in the Eastern Ontario Health Unit. There were no new cases in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, and 2 new cases of COVID in Renfrew County's Health Unit. City of Ottawa providing an update on its COVID-19 vaccination plan following the federal government announcement of a delay in shipments. Now, the Prime Minister is set to update the vaccine situation in moments federally, but first, City News reporter Alex Gouge with the latest from Ottawa's Board of Health Chair.
Board of Health Chair Keith Eglai says the city is using this week's shipment to ensure those who already got their first shot will be getting the second. This comes as the city is anticipating to receive around half of the doses it originally expected, with no word on the amounts of shots being delivered or the exact time for the coming weeks. Eglai explains the tools are in place for the rollout, the city just needs supply.
So it's just a question of getting those doses into the city, but once they're there, again, there's a very robust plan to get them out to the general public.
He adds positive impacts from the Boxing Day lockdowns have presented themselves, but it's too soon to tell the effects of the stay-at-home orders. Alex Gouge, City News.
City News time, 11:02. Other countries are still not seeing a decrease in COVID cases and deaths in the United States, fast approaching another grim milestone with nearly 400,000 deaths. Steve Osusami telling us this morning health officials are concerned the worst is still to come.
Public health officials are now warning that the so-called dark winter isn't over yet. Incoming CDC Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky said that she fears that this country could hit 500,000 dead from the coronavirus by the middle of next month.
Now, the U.S. has so far recorded more than 24 million COVID-19 infections. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Dr. Isaac Bogosh is here, infectious disease physician, member of Ontario's Vaccine Task Force. Good morning. Thank you for taking the time again, Doctor. I understand you're at the hospital. Our time may be limited, and I thank you for taking the time. So what do you think are the implications of this Pfizer factory retooling for Canada?
Well, short-term pain, but kind of better in the long term. But of course, it does prevent expansion of the vaccine rollout program over the next few weeks here in Ontario. I think it's important to recognize why this is happening, and basically they're refurbishing the factory in Belgium so that they can produce 2 billion doses of the vaccine instead of 1.3 billion doses. So we're still supposed to get the same amount at the end of first quarter so they're still supposed to fill their obligations. It's just a slowdown over the next few weeks, which quite frankly stinks because we have to scale back on vaccinating certain groups. And I think making the best of a crummy situation is really focusing all the attention on those who are at the highest risk, which is really those in long-term care.
Yeah. So how do you do that then? How do you make the most of a limited supply?
Basically, we're still getting vaccine. We're just getting less vaccine, and we still had some vaccine from the first place. So all those resources are really going to ensure that those in long-term care continue to get vaccinated. So the same goals of vaccinating all of long-term care still stand. And I think those are still achievable goals, even with the limited supply. It just means that there's no expansion of vaccine programs to other people. So, for example, healthcare providers, there were a lot of healthcare providers that were getting their vaccines, and that's slowed down and actually has stopped in many of the vaccine sites so that resources can be placed into the highest of high risk, which is the long-term care facilities. my personal bias and my own value judgment, that's the right move. Like, long-term care accounts for about 70 to 80% of the deaths in the province and in the country. And we know that, sadly, they're on fire. Like, you've got to triage. This is truly a crisis, and this will truly save lives. But, of course, it does come at the expense of not vaccinating outside of that realm as much as we would like.
Yeah. I have asked you this before, but this idea that if we only have so many doses, what do you think about just giving one dose and then maybe waiting a little longer than for the second dose?
The one dose and adios approach?
Yeah, well, one dose for more people. You know, if you have 100,000 doses, do we give it to 100,000 people, or do we put 50,000 in the freezer and wait 21 days?
Yeah, so, no, the standard is don't put it in the freezer and wait. You administer as many doses up front and rely on the supply chain to help give you that second dose. Now, of course, we know the supply chain is not as strong as we'd like, and we're going to get a reduction in doses. So you've got wiggle room there. Now, of course, you'd want to adhere to that to the protocols. 21 days after the first dose for Pfizer, 28 days after the first dose for the second dose of the Moderna vaccine. But name me any other vaccine on the planet where you have to be exactly on the money for that second or third dose, depending on the vaccine series. There aren't any.
Right.
So it's okay. It's okay to have a little bit of wiggle room. You don't want to stretch it too far, but there always is a bit of wiggle room.
Okay.
And they have that here. And in fact, the WHO and Health Canada has set that wiggle room to 42 days after the first dose. Totally reasonable, totally fine. That's the maximum. That's not the goal. That's the maximum. And you'll see people get it before then, but you're not going to exceed the 42 days to get the second dose.
But with the Pfizer vaccine retooling, it sounds as though you're thinking it's short-term pain, but there could be long-term gain there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because they're ramping up production output.
Absolutely. And
okay.
I don't think this actually. It is frustrating for.
Oh yeah, it's very frustrating. Yeah.
I think for let's look at the big goal. Will we be able to get all of Canada or all of Ontario vaccinated by sometime in the summer? Will we be in a position where anyone who wants a vaccine will have a vaccine? Yeah, we will. I don't think it detracts from medium-term and long-term goals. It just slows down the short-term processes, which is important, but is not. I would say it's not as catastrophic as some might be making it out to be.
Okay. Let me ask you this, because we've taken a few phone calls during our open line hour here on our program. People are wondering, with the mutations of these viruses, variants, whether they could mutate either fast enough or to an extent that the vaccines would be ineffective. Yeah. And that if there's a delay in the delivery of vaccines, could that make a bad situation even worse? What is your opinion, Doctor?
I mean, we got to be careful with these variants that are circulating. We know some of them are here in Canada. But for one of the more common ones, the one that was discovered in the UK, this is the B117 variant. It's pretty clear that the vaccine is going to work against that. For the other variants, for example, one discovered in South Africa, one discovered in Brazil, it is not entirely clear that the vaccine will be as effective, but it looks like the vaccine will, there's unanswered questions. So it looks like the vaccine will work, and the question is, will it work to the same extent? But taking a step back and looking at the big picture, we know viruses mutate. That's what they do. There probably will be a point in time, sooner or later, where the virus changes to such an extent that the vaccine won't be able to provide the same degree of efficacy as we would like, and they'll have to redesign the vaccine and redeploy the vaccine, kind of like what happens every single year with the flu shot.
Right. Okay.
So, if it's in 1 year, if it's in 3 years, if it's in 5 years, I have no idea, but it's probably on the horizon. I'm just not sure what horizon that's on.
Okay. I thank you very much for joining me this morning again, Doctor. It's always great to have you on our show.
Oh, my pleasure. Happy to chat.
Yeah,
Take care.
that's he's at the hospital right now, so his time was limited with us. But I think we got what we needed there. Dr. Isaac Bokosh is an infectious disease physician, and he is a member of Ontario's vaccine task force. So again, coming up in this half hour of the program, I think it's going to be very interesting. We're going to have Mr. Trudeau. He is at Rideau Cottage. Now, as you know, the start time of these things, it's merely a suggestion. He said 11:15. Please, I would like to begin at 11:15. Does he actually begin at 11:15? We'll have to wait and see. Sometimes 10, 15 minutes behind. Sometimes he's right out the door, right at 11:15. Charlie Gillis is going to join us, so I'm really looking forward to this. He is managing editor at Maclean's. And Maclean's has dropped what it calls the power list. 50 Canadians who are breaking ground, leading the debate, and shaping how we think and live. The 50 most powerful people in Canada. Who do you think is number one on that list? The most powerful person in Canada. The power list. Number one is Justin Trudeau. And, the last time apparently they did this list, I'm going to ask Mr. Gillis about this, was back, I believe, in 2014, I read, and number one at that time was, Prime Minister Stephen Harper. The last power list, right? Yeah, incredible power in the Prime Minister's office. Paul Wells writing about Prime Minister Trudeau and his number one ranking on the power list. Quote, there are no more business liberals. No active Quebec or Western or Bay Street wing of the party that makes a show of putting up with the leader for now, but maybe not forever. There are no liberals now, but Trudeau liberals. So he's number one. And then some other interesting, Toby Lutke, called the Wolf of Main Street. Not the Wolf of Wall Street, but the Wolf of Main Street. He was number two. There are other notables on this list. Chrystia Freeland at number 6, the finance minister, followed by BFF, Doug Ford, right? Chrystia Freeland and Doug Ford are best friends, right? He's at number 7, and a lot of people are not happy. So it runs the gamut, and they do kind of veer into the Time magazine kind of thing. Like number 10 on the list is not a person. It's actually the GTA voter. The GTA voter, because that's where all the seats are in vote-rich Ontario. Some ballots count more than others. Legault, Tam, Tiff Macklem is the governor of the Bank of Canada. Retired Supreme Court justices. Aaron O'Toole is on the list. It has a very activist flavor to it. And at number 50 on the list of the Globe and Mail is Bob Fife. So we'll talk about it when we come back with the managing editor of Maclean's here on The Rob Snow Show, Rogers TV, and City News.
It was devastating, and it's devastating to all small business, but not knowing where it was going to go. But then the renovation market, as people stayed home, took off like wildfire. And for us, yes, we're very lucky, very fortunate that we were able to turn things around. I think a lot of it had to do with our internet presence as well, that I was, kept working on over years, and then it kind of took off. So that was very positive. But now, no, people are staying at home. We're renovating different markets, whether it's a kitchen or a backyard or, your fireplace. They want to cozy things up. So yes, things are extremely busy right now. Right now it's fireplaces, and I think with the snowbirds, a lot of those clients have existing wood fireplaces, so they're looking at inserts. So they want to convert the wood to gas. They don't want to deal with the wood part of it, but they want it clean and easy and efficient, and that's been a major, major increase in our business. The cottage and chalet market has really increased, absolutely. We see that people, that's their staycation now, is either the backyard or their cottage with their close bubble of family. So there's no question that we've seen a big, big increase in that area as well. I've seen a change in the backyard because now the staycation, from my past being in the pool business, one of our great clients was in the other day, and he's in the pool business. He's booking for 2022 for in-ground pools, okay? So I think what's happened now is that's brought everybody back home, and I think maybe down the road, maybe 3, 4, 5 years from now, we're still gonna see people spending time in their backyards and staying home more. The barbecue area, really, we call it the backyard. So you walk out of your house into a barbecue, and it kind of looks like that with the fencing and the sky and things like that. So that is just our fun room. It's just, there's a lot of cool gadgets there that has to do with dealing with charcoal and wood pellet barbecues. To go online, you're going to find, you just Google, romantic fireplaces will come up. The one nice thing about our work is that when the Google reviews and the Google pictures are phenomenal. We're uploading stuff every day. I have at least 1,000 jobs, real jobs that you can take a look at, either on the Google pictures on the drive, or if you go to our website at romanticfireplaces.com and click on Our Work. It's where we used to load lots of them up, but there's lots of pictures there too. But the great thing about that is they're real. There's testimonials there about people talking about our team. And our team here is unique to everybody else. It's two small teams, but these fellas work for me. They're our guys. So when they go into your home, they care as much about your house as you do.
Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Here's the Prime Minister. He's talking about vaccinations.
Plan Canada needs to get you and your family vaccinated as soon as possible and to deal with any roadblocks that come up in our way. For example, Pfizer's global supply issues are not ideal, but that's why we were so ambitious in the large numbers of contracts we signed and doses we secured. I can tell you that Minister Anand is in contact with the company every day. Remember, this situation with the Pfizer delay is temporary. Our vaccination objectives for the first quarter of the year, January to March, are not changing. And the total number of doses committed to us is still the same, with every Canadian who wants to get vaccinated able to get vaccinated by September. Quand je dis que tout le monde doit faire sa part,
when I say that everyone has to do their part, I'm also talking to travelers. It's not the time to be traveling abroad. If you had planned to leave the country, please, on behalf of all Canadians, cancel your trip. It's not worth catching COVID-19 and bringing it back to Canada for a trip down south or elsewhere. As you know, travelers must quarantine upon their return, and the consequences are very severe for those who do not follow the rules. As to this new variant of the virus, whether in England, South Africa, or Brazil, we are closely following the situation. But one thing is certain. With these new mutations, circumstances could change very quickly.
On demande aux Canadiens de...
So once again, we're asking Canadians to stay in the country, especially since, as daily, we are reviewing the new issues and we could impose new restrictions without advance notice at any time. More than ever before, during this pandemic, your behavior has consequences for others. Continue to be vigilant. We must continue to help one another. When we don't follow the rules, healthcare workers and the most vulnerable members of our population are at risk. Remember, this is a temporary situation. Vaccines are being deployed. Let's stay strong for the next few months, because just like you, I'm really looking forward to spring.
Critical that everyone keeps doing their part to slow the spread of COVID-19. We owe it to ourselves, to our families, and to everyone around us. Vaccines are coming. In a few months, spring will be here. So now is not the time to abandon our efforts. I think of the tragic and unacceptable situation in long-term care facilities in Ontario and across the country. Our parents and grandparents deserve better. Our nurses deserve better. So to the residents, we are doing everything we can to get you your vaccine as quickly as possible. And to the workers, I know your families are worried as you are worried about them. I know that your kids are afraid to lose you every time you go to work, and you're afraid of bringing home the virus. So if you haven't already received it, we're getting you your vaccine as soon as possible. So thank you for everything that you do. Your dedication, your commitment to Canadians impresses us all. There's a lot more work to be done, but we're making important progress. Last Friday, Mayor Watson here in Ottawa said that all long-term care homes in the city have finished their first round of vaccination. In Quebec, 3/4 of long-term care home residents have had their first shot. More doses are coming, and we won't stop until everyone is safe. Alors que des mesures plus strictes pour freiner
that's the Prime Minister at Rideau Cottage saying the situation with Pfizer is temporary. The situation with Pfizer is temporary. Vaccines are being deployed. I can't wait till spring. 11:21. This is the Rob Snow Show here on Rogers TV and City News. And it's a great pleasure to have on our program Charlie Gillis, managing editor of Maclean's Magazine, out with its Power List. Good morning, Mr. Gillis. Nice to hear from you.
Hey, Rob. Thanks for having me.
And we just heard from number one on the Power List, Prime Minister Trudeau. When you say the Power List, what do you mean by power? For example, I bring that up because there are billionaires on this list. There's a billionaire at number 2, but you don't see names like Weston, or you don't see names like Irving, for example. So what is power?
Well, just listening to Prime Minister Trudeau, before I came on here it exemplifies, I guess, our thinking pretty well. I've been alive, I think, for 9 prime ministers, and I am trying to remember, I can't remember a time when I felt like the prime minister had this much influence over my daily life. And just, what he said there, where he's talking about limiting travel, doing things that that prime ministers and governments, have been unable to do until this unprecedented moment that we're in. I think that tells you a lot right there. And that's, we were trying to think along those lines to a great degree. Who is affecting your daily life? Who is affecting the way you see the world? And, it was pretty hard when all was said and done after we went through our deliberations to avoid the conclusion that Justin Trudeau is the most powerful and influential person in the country.
Why is Toby Lutke, an Ottawa guy, why is he number 2?
Yeah.
Of all the business people you could have picked, for example.
Yeah, there are a couple of reasons for that. One is the obvious fact that Shopify's value just went through the roof. And when you're counting the valuation, the market cap of your company in the 12 digits, I think to a degree that speaks for itself. But interestingly, Toby Lutke and Shopify have, wielded influence in other ways. Importantly, they've been there for businesses that desperately needed to make the transition, especially small businesses that desperately needed to make the transition to digital in an awful hurry when the lockdown set in. And then at the same time, Lutke's been talking, and Shopify have been talking about the change in the workplace, such as this. I sit here speaking to you from the back office in my house.
Right.
And I have spent my life as a journalist working out of newsrooms.
Yes.
And
office centricity is dead now, Mr. Gillis.
Yeah,
right?
And they've talked about unloading property in metropolitan areas that where they've made purchases, and Shopify to an extent, I think, is at the head of that parade. But so there are a whole bunch of pieces to the way they do business on top of the fact that they appear to be doing business with enormous success. Now, that said, you're in Ottawa. The tech and venture capital sectors in Canada are kind of a boulevard of broken dreams. You can look back to everything from Nortel to BlackBerry.
It can be boom bust. It can be boom bust. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see how this plays out. But I don't think that there's any doubt that they've found a really key space in digital commerce, and they've made the most of it. Now, what happens from here? Who knows? Does some great big fish come along and gobble them up? I don't know. But it's hard to get a bigger fish than one that's worth $183 billion.
social movements and kind of their marriage to social media, I'm wondering how that influenced the compilation of these 50 individuals.
Yeah, so, people have asked us about, what's the process? Well, there's no scientific formula. There's no algorithm you can pump numbers into and come out with power and influence. It's a very subjective thing. We have a staff of people who cover the country. And, every region and as many facets of life in the country as we can get into the magazine and get online. So social media was obviously a huge and important part because it took on outsized importance during the pandemic, especially. But there's more to this. I mean, we're just in this time of enormous political and social change. And that was true, I think, before the pandemic set in. So you had, things like Black Lives Matter coming to the fore. You had the Trump administration causing enormous disruption, both, within that country and on the world stage. So I think that there was a great deal of reassessment going on about, about the nature of life in a Western liberal democracy, especially. And, we went looking for the people who were kind of leading that thought change and taking action. And what we came up with, I hope, is a really, a reflective portrait of the diversity of the country, but also the fact that there are names out there that are not on the tips of everyone's tongues.
No.
Who are wielding great influence right now.
Yeah. Many names for the first time, I'm reading about these people. So, I think that's a good thing. It's fascinating. I'd love to be a fly on the wall and debate how a list like this gets compiled. It must be a fascinating process. I encourage everyone to read it at macleans.ca and in the latest edition of Maclean's. And I thank you so much for your time this morning, sir.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Charlie Gillis is the managing editor of Maclean's Magazine. The news is coming up next. This is The Rob Snow Show on City News.
In Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, January 19th. Good morning. I'm Sarah Buchan. Right now in Ottawa, partly cloudy skies, -11. It's -11 with a few clouds in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news this hour. 1,913 new cases of COVID-19 in Ontario, 46 new deaths due to the virus. About 1,626 patients are in hospital. That's an increase over yesterday, and there are more patients in intensive care. Now, Health Minister Christine Elliott says technical issues at Toronto Public Health means case numbers are likely underreported today. Public Health Ontario reports 41 new cases for Ottawa, 14 for Eastern Ontario, no new cases for Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, and 2 for Renfrew County and District. The numbers out of over 34,000 tests, and the local numbers will be updated this afternoon. Quebec is reporting a continuing decline in new COVID-19 cases. 1,386 new cases in that province today. 55 more people have died, 16 of those deaths in the past 24 hours. Health officials report hospitalizations and the number of patients in intensive care have risen. There are 20 new cases in the Outaouais. And Quebec is revising its COVID-19 vaccination schedule as a consequence of the expected slowdown in the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine shipments. The health department says it will revise its target of administering 250,000 doses by February 8th to 225,000 doses instead, adding it expects to receive a little over 1.2 million doses of approved vaccine by the end of March. I'm Sarah Buchan. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
The last full day of the Trump presidency. What a 4 years. Maybe as many as 100 pardons issued today. The Gallup polling organization says that President Trump's last job approval rating will be 34%. That will be the lowest job approval rating for him. He leaves office with an average of 41% job approval, which is 4 points lower than any other president in history, in Gallup's polling history. What is ahead for President Trump? It's the end of a chapter, but could it be the beginning of a new one that involves many more legal problems? Professor Richard Lempert joins us now. Eric Stein, Distinguished Professor of Law and Sociology, Emeritus, University of Michigan. Morning, Professor.
Good morning.
It's very nice to hear from you, sir. The whole issue of, or tradition, I guess, of presidential pardons, that's hardly all brand new, right?
No, it goes back a long way.
Yes.
To the founding of the Republic.
So
Washington issued one in 1795.
Okay. How do you expect this one to be different, whatever happens today with President Trump?
It's hard to say if it will be different. There are things that people are talking about that would make them different. That is pardoning his relatives, like his son or Ivanka, preemptively, which is questionable whether he can do it, but he might be able to. And pardoning friends and associates like Rudy Giuliani. But it's not at all clear at this point if he is going to do that. Some of these pardons will go to, no doubt, friends and acquaintances. There's been a sort of mini scandal here because numbers of people who have influence over Trump have been apparently selling their access for cash and say, I'll help you get your pardon if you turn over $10,000 or $20,000. And Rudy Giuliani was supposedly negotiating for a $2 million payoff to get someone a pardon. So I don't know whether people will get it because they've paid, but there will be some people with access who've gotten pardons. It's expected that a number of the pardons will be really quite traditional, going to people who have been convicted of ordinary crimes and have been punished to excess. Those may actually take the form of commutations, just saying they served enough time. But we'll see. Everyone's waiting for the pardon dump, and it hasn't happened yet, so far as my latest news feed said.
Yeah, I have CNN on right in front of me. Nothing yet. I'm sure it would be big news, big breaking news if members of the Trump family or even Donald Trump tried to pardon himself. But what kind of legal protection would that offer the president of the United States? Because as I understand it, it would be a certain amount of protection from federal crimes, but he is being pursued on potential for state charges, right? So it's not like a blanket immunity from prosecution. Is that right, Professor?
That's certainly correct. I mean, he is unlikely, according to the latest news sources, to pardon himself. If he did, it would be questionable if it would be legal. But putting that aside, assuming that he could pardon himself for any crimes, it would still leave him open to state prosecutions. He is, as you and your listeners know, currently being investigated by the DA for New York County for crimes. It would more importantly, he is open to all sorts of civil suits, numbers of which have been brought. There is a woman suing him for defamation when he denied having raped her, and that suit will go ahead regardless of any kind of pardon because it doesn't apply to civil suits. He is negotiating or has been negotiating with the federal government over something like $70 million in taxes that some people think he avoided paying illegally. A pardon would not protect him from any action to recover that $70 million plus interest, though if he had a pardon, he could not be prosecuted for criminal tax evasion.
Now, how likely is it, do you think, in all honesty, Professor? I read a great line this week. Ex-presidents don't go to prison, they go on book tours. How likely is it that President Trump could actually, someday down the road, actually face a prison term for things that have happened?
I would not bet against it. I don't think I'd bet for it necessarily, but this New York lawsuit is serious, and Trump is just not terribly popular in New York. If the district attorney decides to bring charges, he might well get a conviction. More likely, I guess, would be that there might be a plea bargain which would guarantee that Trump would stay out of prison. If he were, however, to go to a trial and be convicted and be vulnerable to a prison sentence, it might depend a lot on the sentencing judge. On the one hand, you're right. They don't want to send a president, even an unpopular ex-president, to prison. On the other hand, some people feel very, very strongly about equality of the law, and they also feel very strongly about what they see as the evils that Trump has done while he's been president. So I wouldn't put it off the table that he might end up in prison. I don't think it likely.
Okay. How likely would this scenario be? It's fun to speculate, I guess. Could history repeat itself? Gerald Ford pardoned Richard Nixon. It was unpopular at the time, but Gerald Ford said he didn't want the whole situation dragging on in courtrooms for another 4 or 5 years, that it was time to for the nation to move on and start the healing process after Watergate. Could you ever envision a time when Joe Biden might pardon President Trump?
I can't. I think his
neither can I,
be
really. Yeah.
Outraged. I think he himself has a really strong moral compass, and I think he would feel it wrong to pardon. Don't forget that what Nixon was, the crimes that Nixon was pardoned for, the pardon itself pardons him for anything he might have done, but basically it was for a cover-up. It wasn't even for the Watergate action itself, the theft. It was for covering it up, which, as things go, is a rather minor crime in the scheme of things. Trump has been accused of inciting a riot and
insurrection, right? Yeah,
insurrection, exactly. So even if the Nixon issue were a precedent, the different nature of what they are accused of, I think, would preclude a presidential pardon by Biden.
Okay, fascinating, Mr. Lempert. An incredible 4 years. We'll see what happens. Thank you in the next 24 hours. Thank you very much for your time today.
Okay, delighted to talk to you.
Yeah, from the University of Michigan, Professor Richard Lempert. Professor Emeritus there. Mr. Trudeau is speaking about travel right now as he continues his daily briefing at Rideau Cottage. Let's listen in for a little bit here. Taking questions from reporters now.
When we're talking about upcoming break weeks, and eventually
he was asked about could there be further travel
and when they come
restrictions imposed
in the spring. We're going to look at everything we can do to ensure Canadians are protected.
Gallagher, CTV National News. Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole has said that he'd like to kick Derek Sloan out of the Conservative caucus. They're going to have to decide about that for Mr. Sloan accepting donations from Paul Frum, self-described white nationalist. But Mr. Frum's organization has also reportedly received money for the Canadian wage subsidy. So my broader question is, what can be done here for the government and for political organizations like the Liberal Party to avoid from infiltration of far-right groups that may be trying to get into the Canadian political sphere and use public money in some way as well?
I think, Kevin, you're combining a number of different things. First of all, political parties need to remain vigilant, particularly in the wake of what we've seen in the United States from the infiltration or the active presence of fringe or extremist or violent or unacceptable or intolerant elements. And that's something that we constantly need to work towards as all politicians in Canada, which is incidentally why the Liberal Party has been calling for Aaron O'Toole to remove Derek Sloan from caucus for many, many months now, following a number of unacceptable comments that he has made. We are pleased that Aaron O'Toole has finally decided to take leadership, and we'll see how that unfolds. In regards to the wage subsidy, we knew we had to move quickly to support workers in jobs right across the country. And obviously, that meant sending help immediately to families and to individuals when this pandemic hit back in March, so that people could keep food on the table, could continue to pay their rent, regardless of the job or the organization they worked for. Obviously, that requires checking after the fact, and there is a lot of work ongoing with the Canada Revenue Agency and others to ensure that the companies that received and the workers that received these benefits actually needed them and actually qualified for them. And of course, anyone who is found to be breaking the law as a corporation or as an organization will face severe penalties.
Okay, so all right. So the
Stephen Chase with the Globe and Mail.
The following up on a story that was actually first reported by Vice back in December, that groups that were created by this white nationalist guy Paul Frum, they actually received the Canada wage subsidy. One of these organizations is called the Canadian Association for Free Expression, which is promoting homophobia, Holocaust denial, received a wage subsidy, and another one that opposes foreign aid multiculturalism also received a wage subsidy under the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy. Those are your tax dollars at work there, ladies and gentlemen, as the Derek Sloan controversy continues. Derek Sloan accepted $131 from this guy, Paul Frum, self-described white nationalist. I'm Rob Snow. Hey, we're going to go in a totally different direction. The Bank of Canada will make an interest rate announcement tomorrow. Could the Bank of Canada actually cut interest rates tomorrow? We'll ask the chief economist at the Bank of Montreal. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
So Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre has been around since 1982, and it's here to serve residents of Ward 13. So our focus is on helping to reduce poverty in this community, as well as empowering residents to find resilience within themselves. So one of the new focuses of our centre is around food programming. So you'll notice today when we go around on a little tour that we have a number of food programs here at the center. So one being obviously our emergency food program, which is really great, so residents can come and access food when they are in need. We also have a number of food-based social enterprises here at Rideau Rockcliffe as well. So one being the Ottawa Good Food Box, another being Market Mobile. One of our new initiatives that started this year as response to COVID is called Good Food on the Move, and it's a click and collect online store, and we have 7 pickup locations throughout the city. More sort of local here for Ward 13 residents, we've also started a free produce market as well. So community members can come on Wednesdays and Fridays and be able to access additional free fruits and vegetables.
Social Harvest Ottawa is one of the social enterprises here at the Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre. We operate this great urban greenhouse, and our work is not only to grow nutritious and delicious food, but also to nourish communities with community members here in Ward 13 and beyond. The greenhouse is a year-round project. We're a team of 4 employees working here. We have 2 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees. We focus on growing microgreens from late fall to early spring and hothouse crops in the summertime, such as tomatoes and cucumbers.
The Mission Food Truck we're in our 5th week of collaborating with them to come visit our center, and we just got in on it at the right time. They were looking for new communities to branch out to. They said absolutely. Right now they're funded through donations. They travel around Ottawa and just give out delicious, fresh, hot food to people as well. We have at our center the Ottawa Good Food Box as well as the Market Mobile. So Ottawa Good Food Box has been around for 25 years and Market Mobile is a little younger, started in 2014. So they both have the mission and the mandate of making fresh food more accessible and affordable in neighborhoods that lack access to a grocery store. So I think the greatest need that we've seen as a result of the pandemic in our community is people that we maybe have never needed to access our services before, right? So a lot of people have had, layoffs. Maybe they're just not able to work because they have to stay home with their children, over the summer, that sort of thing. So we've definitely seen the need go out, particularly for our food programming, as well as some of our counseling services as well. So it's a heavy time for people emotionally.
News 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
All eyes on the Bank of Canada this week. It will make its latest interest rate policy known tomorrow, and for a preview of what may be to come, Douglas Porter joins us, chief economist at BMO Financial Group. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah, it's very nice to hear from you. What do you think the bank is going to do?
Well, I don't believe they're going to do anything, but it is actually an interesting meeting. And just to back up a little bit, it's been 3 months since they had, a full forecast, what they call a monetary policy report, and a lot has happened in those 3 months. We've had the U.S. election, good news on the vaccine, the second variant on the virus, and clearly a second wave. So there's a lot of moving parts since the Bank of Canada last came out, and there is talk that they might trim their interest rate a little bit, not take it down to zero, but potentially take it down, say 10 or 15 basis points to just 0.1%. That's a minority view. We don't believe they're going to do it at this point. The slender reason why they might do it is just because they could be a bit concerned about the strength in the Canadian dollar we've seen recently and how that might weigh on exports and the broader economy in 2021.
So not necessarily about any kind of worry about economic strength or weakness or inflation or deflation, but rather the strength of the currency.
Well, that at a time when we've had renewed restrictions as well, and we are we know that employment fell in December, and it probably fell in January as well. And overall economic activity probably took a step back around the turn of the year because of renewed restrictions. So it would be those two factors that could drive the Bank of Canada to trim interest rates. I don't believe they are going to. Most players in the market do not believe they're going to cut interest rates, but they are pricing in a slight chance, say about a 1 in 4 chance that the bank might deliver what they call a micro interest rate cut.
Okay. How would you describe right now the current state of the Canadian economy from a kind of macro view?
Well, it really depends on what industry we're talking about.
Okay.
It's a very bizarre and unusual backdrop we're dealing with. Of course, some sectors of the economy are as healthy as they've ever been, and the housing market is example A on that front, and others are weak like they've never been weak before. The travel industry and the restaurant industry spring to mind on that front. So, it truly is a case of the haves and the have-nots from an industrial or a sectoral breakdown. The economy overall, when you look at where the unemployment rate is, where overall activity is, it's about akin to a fairly serious recession. Nothing like we haven't seen before in terms of its depth. I mean, we've certainly seen unemployment rates in the 8% range before. That's not that unusual. But it still has a long way to go before it's back to full health, and really it will require eventually a healthy reopening of the economy to get back to full health.
Okay. So then, Doug, do you think from an economic recovery point of view that is really going to be a second half story for 2021, much dependent on, say, the pace of vaccination rollouts?
I think a full recovery is probably a story for about a year from now.
Okay.
Hopefully it'll happen a little bit earlier than that. But I do think at least a partial recovery from where we are now is possible as early as the spring. Provided the virus numbers can start falling more meaningfully across the country in the weeks ahead. As the weather warms up, hopefully the virus numbers come down. We can get at least a partial reopening through the spring. And of course, by that point, a number of people will be vaccinated. Hopefully hospitalization rates will be well down by then as well. We'll see. But we do think we can get a partial recovery in the spring. We actually think growth will be relatively solid through the spring months. But again, we're not going to be all the way back until the virus is really completely in the rearview mirror.
Okay. How much of what happens in Canada, you mentioned, tomorrow's a big day with the inauguration of U.S. President Joe Biden. There's talk of a nearly $2 trillion stimulus program that could be in the offing, which $2 trillion, just, the GDP of the entire Canadian economy is an incredible amount of money. But how meaningful is that in the Canadian context? What happens, say, short, medium term in the United States?
It would definitely be a benefit to Canada if the U.S. were to spend like that. And thank you for pointing out just the ginormous size of these kind of numbers that the U.S. is talking about. And it's almost as if, the $900 billion that was agreed to late last year has been forgotten. That's barely even begun at this point. And, every American earning up to a certain level is getting a $600 check, which I think they will spend pretty quickly in the weeks ahead. On top of other measures. So, that was quite an enormous package, and it's almost as if it's been forgotten. I don't believe the $1.9 trillion will be enacted as is. Most on Wall Street are guesstimating that maybe half of that will be plugged into the U.S. economy. But again, that's a large number. That's roughly half the size of the Canadian economy, as you said. Even if they only do half of what they're suggesting, and that would be a big benefit to Canada. It would be a big benefit to our commodity markets, certainly.
Okay, what's your thinking on this feeling that because Canadians have had very little opportunity to actually go out shopping, spend disposable income. We saw an unprecedented increase in the savings rate, for example, that there's a lot of money built up, and there's a lot of pent-up demand, and that eventually that will be unleashed, and it could be stimulative for the Canadian economy down the road. Do you think that could be the case, Doug Porter?
Oh, I absolutely believe that. I've been a strong proponent of that for months now. I actually don't believe that the government will need to do much more once the economy is reopened. I think people are aching to spend in areas that they haven't been able to spend for the last year. I think a vast majority of people want to travel. They want to go to restaurants. They want to go see the Leafs or the Senators, believe it or not. So I do believe people are just waiting for that moment when they get the all clear. I don't think the government is going to need to really do much more to support the economy once the health crisis is in the rearview mirror.
Okay. Just on mortgage rates, for people who are in this scenario where they may be shopping or renewing, what's your forecast for the rest of the year for mortgage rates, Doug?
So the variable mortgage rates are unlikely to change over the next year. We don't believe the Bank of Canada we don't believe they're going to raise interest rates. As I said, there's the slim chance they might trim them a little bit, but bigger picture, I don't think we're going to see much change in variable mortgage rates for some time yet. I do believe the longer-term interest rates are going to start to see some gradual upward pressure. We've already seen a backup in global long-term interest rates, and specifically U.S. and Canadian long-term interest rates from their depths last year. They're still extraordinarily low. But I suspect there's going to be a bit of a grind upwards this year. I don't think, some forecasters are looking for a big rise in long-term interest rates. I think there are just too many restraints on the economy, to see a significant backup. But I do think they're going to edge higher.
Okay. And you mentioned the strength in the Canadian dollar around 79 cents U.S. Do you expect that to continue? Could we someday soon be talking about an 80-cent Canadian dollar, for example?
Well, of course, we're very close to that metric. I wouldn't at all be surprised if we, for a spell, get a little bit above 80 cents. Our official forecast is for the currency to end the year at 80. There's a lot of moving parts on the exchange rate, but I think from a very big picture standpoint, a recovery in the global economy, somewhat stronger oil prices, and a weaker U.S. dollar, all point to some further rise in the Canadian dollar. I'm not especially bullish on the Canadian dollar. I'm concerned about some of our competitiveness issues over the medium term, but those tend to be secondary factors in any given year. And I think from a cyclical standpoint, the Canadian dollar has a bit of a tailwind at this point.
Okay. What are some of the biggest risks to the economy right now? I guess it's the virus and maybe vaccines and problems with the vaccine rollout, I guess, would be the big one, right?
I would definitely concur. We can point to lots of sort of typical risks that the Canadian economy would face in any year, but I think they're just completely swamped by how the virus progresses and to what extent the vaccine gets rolled out in the months ahead. I think those are the biggest determinants. There are a few other. There is.